And finally, new rule, being obsessed with your mental health is bad for your mental health. I've been thinking a lot lately about a puzzle many are struggling with. Why are Biden's approval ratings so low when things are generally pretty good? Now, of course, there are problems. America's a big place, but wages are rising. Unemployment is negligible. The stock market is soaring. We somehow brushed off both the Trump presidency and the pandemic. Yes, inflation persists for a lot of things, but you know, an actual good, nice-sized TV now costs $60. Who gets credit for that? We've got next-day shipping, stuffed crust pizza, legal weed, GPS, and porn on the phone. Cheer the fuck up. Stop acting like life in America in 2024 is unbearable. Biden's ratings are in the toilet, not because he's doing such a bad job, but because a lot of Americans like to live with their head in the toilet. Let's look at the numbers. Almost a third of American adults have reported a depression diagnosis at some point in their life. And while depression is, of course, a very real thing, it's also true that earlier generations never suffered from the expectation that you're supposed to feel good all the time. 1 in 8 adults are on antidepressants, and that doesn't include the ones who steal them from their kids.
Welcome. Wow. Welcome to a Monday edition of RBN Live. I'm your host for today. I'm CJ, and today's episode will be straight out of politics. Anytime we come live, it's always RBN Live, but this is straight out of politics. Sometimes I use the podcast name, You Left Shit Out. That's typically when stuff, all of the time, these are stories where point of views are left out and we're trying to give our point of view. But in particular, like if it's a debate, I'll probably do You Left Shit Out. But this one is straight out of politics because this is more of an analysis of what I see in these stories. So that's the reason why we're going with that. But welcome again. We're starting out with Bill Maher, the resident male Karen. I could think we all can just, accept that this guy is pretty damn disgusting. He's considered the left, I guess, because he tells jokes, maybe because he's in Hollywood. But it's just from what he says is nothing about him that is left. Nothing about him is non-establishment. He's also was going to be a scab. Remember, he was announced that he was going to be a scab during the writer's strike, and then he had a little backlash, so he kind of backed off of it. And at the end, I think he saw what happened with Drew Barrymore, so he probably felt he made the right decision. But just listening to him give a scolding to people who are responding to polls based on their reality. Right? Let me make sure my mic is good. Okay, it doesn't look like anything's wrong with my mic. But based on their reality. So I am Joe Smo in Nebraska, and I'm working 60 hours a week. My rent just went up. Groceries have doubled. And so when you ask me the question, how's the economy doing? How is the economy doing for me? In this example, well, I'm working 20 hours plus over what's considered full time, and I still can't make ends meet. And then you have the audacity to talk about some stock market, to talk about some employment rate. I'm employed, and I can barely tread water. And the example I always give, what does an employment rate have to do with the economy? These markers that they have to so-called determine if an economy is good. These are markers that determine if owners are doing well. The stock market is owners are doing well. They have the audacity to make it equivalent that if the owners are doing well, that means the economy's doing well, right? Workers are saying no. No, that's not right. How are we judging an economy where the number one thing we're using to judge whether an economy is good is how far the dollar can go? Well, how is that not the marker? How far the dollar can go for the average worker? How is whether the economy is doing good? How is it not matched with workers' wages to inflation, or workers' wages keeping up with inflation? How we're at $7.25 when we should be in the 30s or 40s per hour for minimum wage. Why isn't that the judgment? How close we are to catching up to that number? So, but what is being shown, a bright glaring flashlight, is that these markers that are telling you as economy is good have nothing to do with whether the economy is doing good or not. How is it that the two things most people can't live without, which is food and housing, the two things that are stuck at a high rate, how is that not the marker? But you want us to be happy that some prices on some fucking dolls have gone down. That's what they want you to be happy about. The price. What did he say? The price of a TV. Well, at least you can buy a TV. A TV where? So I can play while I'm unhoused. Nigga, I got rent. You're talking about a TV. So let's bring up this receipt here, and this is just the introduction, our introductory segment. But the rent is too damn high. Couldn't that, let me say it that way. Let's say there's 20 markers and you're doing good in 18 out of the 20 markers. But the two markers you're doing the worst in are the two markers that take up 99.9% of your income, which is food and housing. What is the value of the other two areas that I'm doing so quote unquote well in, if the two most important areas that take up the vast majority of my income I'm doing bad in? They want you to judge on what they say to judge is a good economy. Owners are doing good. Look at Jeff Bezos. Look how much money he's made. Doesn't that mean the economy's doing good, huh? That's essentially what these scolding segments that they do, and they used to do them on mainstream media or corporate media, but they stopped, or they have subsided a lot because it didn't get a good reaction. I remember I did one where Stephanie Rule brought on somebody on MSNBC, and I know some of you remember this. It was a guy with long hair, glasses. He looked like the younger version of the guy from Back to the Future. You know, the older guy with the white hair. I forget his name. The older guy in the movie, the white hair. Is two main characters, Michael J. Fox and the older guy with the white hair, like a younger version of him with glasses. If you guys remember that interview. But she brought him on to say it would be a bad thing if prices were going down. That was some of the foolishness, the mental jiu-jitsu they were trying to confuse workers, but we were here at RBN to bat that nonsense down. It was just complete nonsense. Yeah, Christopher Lloyd is his actual name. In the movie, it was Doc. Yeah, it's a classic. I'm a 80s baby, so I know all the 80s stuff, you know. Dynasty, A-Team, the Smurfs. What else was popular? Was Family Ties popular? Yeah, Family Ties. Anyway, I'm dating myself. But anyway, I was a kid when those were out. But as a kid, I watched a lot of TV because I was in a very restricted sort of household because we lived in Compton. Parents kind of kept a close eye on us here. But anyway, I digress. Let's get back to the story, and that is Bill Maher basically saying being poor ain't that bad, guys. It's not as bad as the poors are making it out to be. That's essentially what he's saying. Like, cheer up. But it's crazy how he mixes different topics to make them seem like it comes from the same source, it's the same meaning, and he mixes people's diagnosis with different sort of mental disorders. He mixes that in with people, I guess, not being happy about the economy, so they're not happy about anything. But let's talk about let's talk about the pointing out of the diagnosis of mental disorders. This is something we say here on RBN. These are illnesses of capitalism. So these are ailments, I should say, not illnesses, but these are, or these, the frequency, let's say, that is a reflection of the brutality it is for a person to maintain themselves in capitalism, which shouldn't be a system that a economic system shouldn't drive people to medication in order to survive, in order to sustain. You get what I'm saying? So he's connecting them when they should not be connected, but I can make that connection with capitalism. And then he goes on later on, I'm not going to play it. He goes on to talk about who's the most unhappy. Then he brings in white women and talks about Karens, basically. And he mixes that all up as to mean what? Those are two distinctly different things that he's trying to make out to be, that the Karens are unhappy for the same reason people are saying the economy's terrible. As if that's the same reason. That's preposterous, but that's what the bourgeoisie class, the ruling class, does. They purposely don't get it. You get what I'm saying? And they glaringly see that the rent is too damn high, and Joe Biden knows it. This is from Politico. And I'm not gonna read it. I just wanted to make the point because, again, this is just the intro. Now let's get into what we're gonna be discussing here. Maybe I'll go back to Twitter here, and I'm gonna be talking about just some of the other topics here that are more connected. Yeah, he goes on into another rant of statistics, but again, these statistics that they use, or stats, let's just say that, since I have a hard time saying that word, are slanted. They need to let workers pick the stats that are used. But before we close, I'm sorry, I forgot about this. Let's get a couple of reaction. Some people we like here over at RBN regulars. That's Carl Za. You just saw him. I think he was on last month, or maybe it was the month before, since we just were in the middle of March. Could have been a month before. He was just on. He says, "Let them eat cake." In other words, that's the translation of Bill Maher. Thank you, Carl. And then Ron Placone, rich guy in gated community, wonders what the poors are upset about. Failed state comedy. Yes. And then Danny Haifeng, multi-millionaire racist war propagandist agent, Bill Maher insulting Americans for refusing to embrace a senile warmonger currently facilitating genocide in Gaza just about sums up the bankrupt liberal elite class. I love that better. I use the different phrasing, but the bankrupt elite class, bankrupt liberal elite class, in other words, clutching the pearls of their crumbling empire. Love that. And that is a great way to send that intro segment out just to get warmed up with conversation. We got a lot of stuff to get to. I'm going to bring up my notes and bring up the graphic here. I'm trying to be a little bit more planned out in not just the topics and a few talking points, kind of like if you're using a rapping analogy. Jay-Z is known to come in without writing anything, listen to the beat, kind of says it back in his head. 30 minutes he runs to say his entire rap, which you hear on the song, one take. Then there are those that have to sort of write it down, and I feel like I've done as much as I could do the Jay-Z way, where I just come in and just I've listened to the stuff, I've listened to the beat, essentially what he does, I've listened to the stuff, I've read it, and I know the lines I'm gonna say. Like what he does, he puts the lines together, and then I just come here and hopefully I remember the lines and I'm saying as I go. But I want to try to plan this out a little more so that I can make sure I'm more precise and my coverage of these topics. And it's to help it's to help all of us get better. It's to help me facilitate conversations more. It's to help facilitate learning more. It's to help deepen learning. So let's continue with the topics and just kind of an overall sort of monologue I want to start with. And let's start here. And actually, let me make sure I don't have any super chats. I need to shout out anybody. And thank you for everybody that's watching. Make sure you hit that like button. I'll say this. On YouTube, we're a little bit over 250 people watching. On Nick's Twitter stream, there's 600 people. On the RBN main account on Twitter stream, that's 200 people. And then there's a few people in the Twitches and the Facebooks. So welcome everybody. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button. 800 is the target on YouTube. And the 600 people, if you're watching on Twitter, don't just watch. Hit that like button on Twitter. The 600 people that are watching on Twitter, do us a favor and do that. All right, so now we can get into the topic. And the overall topic is the U.S. empire attempts to scapegoat Netanyahu for genocide, and all of the sort of segments, or most of the segments, are going to tie into Israel and maybe an analysis of this and this broader topic. So make sure I'm going to try to make sure I'm concise and dipping in and out of different topics. But this is the sort of broad overarching topic. And I want to start with a video from Ali Velshi. And the reason I want to start here is because when we're asking ourselves about the empire and whether or not this genocide is all Netanyahu's fault and not the state of Israel in conjunction with the United States is preposterous. This video that Ali Velshi did, I can't remember how long ago he did, or if this is a refresher of he just refreshed some of the topic. But this is a video on AIPAC. And this is going to illustrate, show who's really running this country. It's going to indicate who does the biggest foreign interference into any government. That is by far Israel. Yet they're not registered as foreign agents. The people who advocate, literally everybody in the government who take money from AIPAC and Israel should register as a foreign agent. That would literally make every single person in government that. I would say maybe 95% of those elected people in government. But if you thought this is Netanyahu's fault. If you think what you're hearing about Netanyahu, what you're hearing about the rhetoric, think again, because this is who's really controlling our government. This is who's really controlling. I mean, they're able to get a TikTok bill through the House in 24 hours past waiting. And it's the Senate that's holding it up. That's the influence they have. They have the Senate voting on whether or not anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. I'm sorry, they had the House voting on that. That's the power that they have. Let's listen.
The American Israel Public Affairs Committee. It was incorporated in 1963. For 10 years prior to that, it was...
Now, it's the American Israel. It used to be the American Zionists. Just think about the genesis of the name. They changed it to the I. It used to be Z. It used to be AZPAC. American Israel. I'm sorry, American Zionists. I'm sorry. And now they switched it to Israel. Now, think about the origin of that. The fact that it used to be Zionist tells you that this was never about being Jewish. Otherwise, they would name it the American Jewish or the American Israel from the beginning. The fact that they started out with Zionists tells you what this project is about. But anyway, I digress. But let's watch a big bulk of this video here.
The American Israel Public Affairs Committee. It was incorporated in 1963. For 10 years prior to that, it was known as the American Zionist Committee for Public Affairs.
There we go.
AIPAC calls itself America's pro-Israel lobby, and according to its website, it has over 3 million members across the country in regional chapters working to, quote, expand and strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship, end quote. You may know AIPAC as being one of the biggest and most recognizable donors to many of the members of Congress in your state. But contributing to campaigns is a relatively new function of the organization. Before 2021, AIPAC did not endorse candidates nor give political contributions. Its focus was on lobbying elected officials, not actually electing officials. But in a dramatic shift in policy, AIPAC began directly funding candidates and spending big on races in 2021. AIPAC Political Action Committee, AIPAC-PAC, filed something called a Statement of Organization with the FEC just in time for the 2022 election cycle, where it spent $50 million, including both direct contributions to candidates and outside spending like TV advertisements. According to AIPAC, it donated money to 365 candidates from both parties, including every single member of both Democratic and Republican leadership in Congress.
Every single member of leadership of both parties. Imagine if we said Putin and Russia donated the same amount of funds to every single member of leadership. Imagine if we said that. But that's what we have going on here in the United States. And then with the straight face, they can say things like Israel's not committing a genocide. They can say things with a straight face. Israel's not breaking international law. Just amazing. But anyway, let's get through this, because this is just the setup video for the rest of the main presentation here. This is just to set up how this notion that, and this is what the establishment, in particular the Democratic establishment, is pushing this very hard. Morning Joe began softly pushing this. Remember an episode with David Ignatius? He began pushing this. Wow, this had to be in December, November, but mildly. Yeah, we're gonna see what's going on. But now we have reached full-fledged let's make this about Netanyahu versus Joe Biden. So they're essentially doing the same thing they're doing about with the Republican Party and Donald Trump. They're scapegoating one person when they know that the whole damn Republican Party is terrible. Like, like Nikki Haley's better than fucking Donald Trump. Get the fuck out of here. So, you notice this shift, and it's literally just a messaging shift. It's never policy shift. So it's literally just messaging. Even in the Chuck Schumer speech, which we're going to be getting to, literally he says later in the speech, yeah, we're not going to be changing anything as far as policy wise, though. No, that was just a speech. This is what they do. They're not changing any policy. Let's continue with the rest of this, and he's going to name some of the people, the top donors, the top receivers of money from AIPAC
in Congress. 109 Republicans who voted against the certification of the 2020 presidential election in America received campaign contributions from AIPAC.
Wait, what? Wait. Those election deniers that are in Congress, AIPAC is donating to them, and the Democrats don't have anything to say about that? They don't have a critique of AIPAC supporting people against democracy? That's just another contradiction from the Democrats who claim that they worried about democracy ending. See this contradiction here? This big glaring contradiction? AIPAC supports financially over 100, what did he call them? I don't think he said election denier, but effectively. No, and you hear tumbleweeds when it's time to critique
All
them.
in all, AIPAC gave money to 342 members of the 118th Congress. The 2022 elections were the most expensive midterms.
342 members. 342 members. There's not even 100 more members. So less than 100 members do not receive money from AIPAC.
In American history, with a total cost of $8.9 billion spent. Now, last year, AIPAC ranked 15th in total expenditure by a political action committee, according to data collected by Open Secrets. But
so AIPAC ranked 15th. So when you're ranking who's giving the most money, AIPAC ranks here, 15th. Now let's see who else is ranked around that who else is in that ranking? Who's 13, who's 12, who's 11, who's 16, who's 17? Let's see.
Take a look at the other funders that AIPAC is competing against for that title. Act Blue and Win Red. They are Democratic and Republican Party machines. Save America is Donald Trump's money-raising operation. The Conservative Club for Growth, Emily's List, focuses on electing Democratic women to office. All of the PACs on this list are massively domestic-focused ideological machines. AIPAC is the only organization in the top 20 whose interests are focused entirely on America's relationship to a foreign government.
How is this not election interference? There's no other foreign entity that's ranked close in the top 20 like AIPAC. But we're free. This is a land
now,
of the free.
Let's take a look at who benefits from AIPAC's largesse. Here are the top 20 recipients in Congress, the House and the Senate, of AIPAC money in the 2022 midterm cycle, according to Open Secrets. They're members of both parties. They come from every corner of the country with varying levels of experience in Congress. The Democrat Glenn Ivey of Maryland tops the list. He beat out fellow Democrat Donna Edwards in Maryland's House.
Now, what I remember about this segment, and I'm gonna make the same critique, because this is a good segment that he's pointing out, but he can't help but also be a shield for the establishment, because what he's not pointing out is the vast majority of these top recipients, these are all Democrats. That's what he's leaving out here. He's essentially trying to make the point how the government's bought, but he's refusing to make the point that in this purchase, the Democrats are the one that's getting paid the most. They're getting the most money to sell out. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So on this line here, 10 names, the last one is a Republican. All of the other ones are Democrats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then over here is half and half. 10 names, 5 and 5. 9 and 5, 14. 14 out of 20. To me, that should be a point, because I think definitely if it was flipped the other way, 14 out of 20 were Republicans, I think he would definitely make the point. But he skips over this point. Although this is a good segment, let's let him continue.
Ivy of Maryland tops the list. He beat out fellow Democrat Donna Edwards in Maryland's House primary after AIPAC poured millions into pro-Ivy advertisements and mailers. Edwards was running for a second stint in Congress after serving during the Obama administration, where she voted present, not even a no, on a number of pro-Israel resolutions. So the money poured in against her. Not even an endorsement from Nancy Pelosi could save her.
So this is the point that I make all the time with progressives, social democrats, liberal, whichever name they use. Why are you sacrificing your quote unquote principle by supporting Israel at all? Because if it's not 100% unequivocal support, they're coming after you regardless. So what is the benefit, is what I'm trying to say. What is the benefit for selling out your policy beliefs by being okay with financially supporting Israel? Because that's what most of them, oh yeah, I'll support them, the Israel right to defend itself and all this other stuff. And they support money normally, but right now they don't want to give the money because it's, conditions on it and because it's a genocide. But under normal pre-October 7th, they were fine with it. Voting like present. So it just doesn't make sense. What value are you getting out of it? Jamal Bowman, who's going to get primary, and likely Cori Bush is going to get primary for sure. And Jamal Bowman's on the borderline. What is... Now Cori Bush, to be fair, I don't know if she's ever voted to support financially. Please, in the comments, if you know, if she's voted to support financially Israel at all. I don't know. But what value is your support, Jamal Bowman, for example, with the Iron Dome, with going out there and making visits, when you just say, can you please give the Palestinian crumbs, they come for your head? What is the value in selling your soul then? I don't get that. You get what I'm saying? So it doesn't make any sense to me. Let's let him say a couple of more points here, and then we'll close this video and get to the presentation.
Michigan Democrat Haley Stevens unseated Democratic Representative Andy Levin. Here's what Levin had to say about that.
Now, this is the Andy Levin that's part of the Uncommitted in Michigan. One of the guys who was part of the organization organizing it, the one who was come on TV and say, no, I'm for Joe Biden, but this is a needed thing. He was ousted as a rep and he's going to explain it in this video here, but he was ousted because he showed humanity towards Palestinians.
I'm really Jewish, but AIPAC can't stand the idea that I am the clearest, strongest Jewish voice in Congress, standing for a simple proposition that there's no way to have a secure democratic homeland for the Jewish people unless we achieve the political and human rights of the Palestinian people.
AIPAC spent $4 million against Levin. He lost by 20 points. When Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian American in Congress, was censured by the House in early November over what some lawmakers called her rhetoric around the Israeli-Hamas war, 22 Democrats joined Republicans in that censure vote. 18 of those Democrats received campaign funds from AIPAC.
18 of them. 22 voted. 18 of them received money from AIPAC. Who's running our government? How is this a democracy? How is Israel getting a vote? How is Israel getting more than a vote? They're getting veto power. It's amazing. And you see Ritchie Torres right here at the bottom row, and we'll be covering this jackass in a second, or demon spawn is what I'm going to call him in a segment.
In 2022, totaling more than $1.1 million. By the way, for these 6 of them, AIPAC was their top contributor.
And
A
there you
growing
see
list
Ritchie
of progressive
Torres.
lawmakers who are vocal in their criticism of the government of Israel and its policies and their support for Palestinian self-determination have inspired AIPAC to spend even more. As progressive lawmakers began calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, Slate reported that insiders expect AIPAC's 2024 spending to hit $100 million. In fact, United Democracy Project, which is a pro-Israel super PAC affiliated with AIPAC, is already spending money on attack ads against Democratic Representatives Jamal Bowman of New York and Summer Lee of Pennsylvania. Lee has already got a primary challenger, as do Cori Bush and Ilhan Omar. Pro-Israel donors have already signaled that they're eager to primary Rashida Tlaib and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Congresswoman Lee already overcame AIPAC's financial influence against her once. She tweeted criticisms of Israel's treatment of Palestinians in 2021, but as a candidate, she affirmed Israel's right to exist. But that's not good enough. AIPAC spent nearly $3 million in the primary alone to defeat Lee, and they almost did. She beat Stephen Irwin, who is 3rd on the list of money given to candidates by AIPAC in 2022, by less than 1,000 votes. And if Congresswoman Lee wants to keep her seat in 2024, she's going to have to do it all over again. She joins me in studio after this break.
So it's a whole separate lane story that I don't think I'm going to have time to get to, but it's another movement called Reject AIPAC, and it's mostly progressive Democrats have formed this to kind of combat what they know is the onslaught of money that's coming from AIPAC. I believe Summer Lee's part of it, like Nina Turner has shouted it out, but it's called Reject AIPAC. Maybe I'll be able to get to that, but it's not on the list of items because I didn't get to it. Because I didn't think I would get to it. And actually, I said I was going to put up the graphic and the rest of the topics, and I forgot to do that. Let me just pop it up really quick now. And where is it at? Because that kind of set us up. What I wanted to do was start out with this video so we can clearly see who is running what, how the government is bought. Remember, 346 he said received money from AIPAC. It's only something like 430 some odd members. So literally less than 100 people can say, hey, I didn't receive money from AIPAC out of everybody in Congress. That's just outrageous. So the way they're trying to shift this blame on Netanyahu, then how do you explain this AIPAC money and most of our Congress being bought off? That's complicity there. So this is not just Netanyahu. It's Netanyahu and the 346 people that received the money and the president that's acting like this is not a genocide, and Anthony Blinken and Lloyd Austin. So let's show some of the other topics that we're going to tie in here. Here's the graphic. Most of this is Joe Biden. There's another topic. David Pakman says voting third party makes no sense. So we're going to be covering that story. We also have the story of Democrats blame Netanyahu for everything. We're going to cover Ritchie Torres. He's on the far right. Ritchie Torres is an AIPAC demon spawn. That's the name of that segment. And then we have double haters. There's a term called double haters. We're going to talk about how double haters will decide the election in 2024. That's why you see Joe Biden on there. We covered the bill, Maher. I was going to say O'Reilly, but really, is it really a difference? It's not. And then if we get to it, Biden has grown angry and anxious about re-election efforts. He's talking about the polls aren't moving. And then corporate media desperation over Biden on full display. And then we're already covering the empire attempting to scapegoat Netanyahu for the genocide, but we're setting the groundwork, meaning the understanding that AIPAC is running this shit. So now let's get to, what's the first part of my presentation here? Let's stay in line here. Let's do that. I'm gonna make sure I stay in line. So I'm gonna stay on this page. I always go off script here. I gotta stop doing that. So what I want to get to first is we're gonna get more into the scapegoating part a little bit later. I want to do it in this sort of this different path before I get back to that, because I want to first set up how the Palestine struggle, the Palestine genocide, what Israel's committing on Palestine, which is a genocide, how it's affecting Joe Biden, because that is why we're going to be pivoting to why they're scapegoating. So we first need to set up, the Joe Biden part. So let's get to the double haters. So this is from the Weekend Show, and a lot of you don't see these clips from a show called The Weekend on MSNBC because it's a pretty terrible show. It's with this guy, Republican Michael Steele, and then it has Simone Sanders Townsend, and then it has, I always forget her name. It's another young lady who's on there. It's pretty terrible, but this is a segment where they're talking about double haters. But what's this one? But this is also showing the desperation, because you can hear it in the segment. You can hear it in their voices. I thought this was funny. So let's see if you guys also think that this is funny, the way that they're reacting. Let me make sure I get the right thing up here. We can start with this one. That's fine. Corporate media desperation over Biden on full display. So let's do the setup of why there needs to be a scapegoat. So let's start here.
Say they'll never cast a ballot for him again. The group, Republican Voters Against Trump, is collecting their stories as part of a $50 million ad buy to keep him out of the Oval Office.
I am a conservative Republican, but I cannot stand the lying, the cheating, the illegal activities that Trump has perpetuated.
Basically, Trump lost, and he is a poor loser.
I was a Haley supporter, but now I'm going to vote for Biden. There are key issues such as democracy that are bigger than any one candidate or any one policy disagreement.
I know that democracy will be saved under Biden, and we can start the Republican Party anew once the era of Trump is over.
Former Republican Congressman and MSNBC political analyst David Jolly and Washington Post opinion editor and MSNBC political analyst Alexi McCammon join us now. Welcome to you.
I forgot about her.
Hello. It is so nice to to see you guys. Talk to me, David, about these messengers, right? Because you have former Vice President Mike Pence saying he's not going to vote for Donald Trump, not going so far as to say he will endorse President Biden. We could talk about that. But then to have these everyday Americans also saying, I voted for him. I get it. I'm one of you, but I'm not going to do it again. If you had to weight those, who carries more weight?
So we're in the world of permission structure now. And I think the most relatable voices are the voices you just saw. And what is different about those voices is the willingness to say, so therefore I will vote for Joe Biden, because that is absolutely what's missing from elected Republican leaders. And honestly, we're 8 years into this. There is no learning curve. If you're not willing to say, so then the answer is Joe Biden, then that's just not good enough. And
if you're not willing to say, then the answer is Joe Biden. Now, you might be saying, oh, you're speaking to the vote blue, no matter who crowd the cowbell left as do this and this. No, he's saying Republicans. You need to finish the sentence by saying, and you must support Joe Biden. Now, he's a Republican. A lot of people would call him a rhino in the conservative movement. They would call him a rhino. Even when he was still in office, he wasn't, he was like considered like a rhino type, or, a Mitt Romney sort of type. So let's continue though, so we can get through some of this.
Look, if your resistance to Donald Trump is on tax policy, I get it. Okay, you're not going to vote for Joe Biden. But if you're suggesting that he is a threat to democracy, that he is unfit for office, that he is dangerous, then the only answer is to also say, so therefore vote for Joe Biden, because otherwise you.
So if you're down for tax policy, it's okay for you not to say vote for Joe Biden. So if you want to save money on taxes, that's okay though, guys. Isn't that what he said? Isn't he saying taxes? I get it. But if you want to save democracy, so what are you saying is important? Let's continue.
As you risk voters staying home or voters flirting with a third-party candidate, which could very well hurt Joe Biden.
Michael Steele, yesterday you said much the same, and you said you were greedy, that you wanted to see Mike Pence not just come out against Donald Trump, but you wanted the Biden endorsement too. Well, our friend David Jolly, equally greedy.
No, David and I are simpatico.
I mean, this is pretty sad because the segment is, or the critique is, Pence came out. So it's not good enough for these people now that Pence came out and says, I will not be endorsing Donald Trump. And all over the news, all the liberal media, CNN, what he's not. Look at this. Look, as if this is a big deal. You mean the guy getting 3% in the polls has something to say? Like nothing Mike Pence has to say has any relevance or is it any resonance in the conservative MAGA movement, whichever, if you look at them separately or together. So what he has to say is completely immaterial, is irrelevant here. Let's continue.
As usual, because that's my boy. But the reality of it is very much that. I love the clip, that sound bite where the young man says, "Now I'm voting for Biden," and that's the key thing, Alexi. I believe in this election, we saw in 2016, Trump voters come out against him in 2020, right? So since that time, what happened? He got more votes, right? That year in 2020. So are you seeing from your reporting any signs that this, what we saw captured in this video is actually going to make this time different with voters?
I mean, obviously, it remains to be seen. And this election is much more like 2016 than 2020 for a number of reasons. I agree with David Jolly on both points that it's not enough to just not endorse Trump. You have to also say Biden is the choice if you care about democracy.
That is insane.
But also the number of folks in the electorate who don't like both major party nominees has fluctuated quite a bit. In 2016, it was something like 17%, and Trump won them by a large margin. In 2020, they were only 3% of the electorate, and Biden won them. Now, this year, they're about 19, 20% of the electorate. And for a lot of folks who see these videos, if you do not say, like that man said, now I'm going to vote for Biden, I think you're kind of encouraging people who don't like either Biden or Trump to stay home, because you're not sort of offering them an alternative choice. You're just sort of saying, you voted for Trump in the past, he's not good enough this time, therefore, good luck.
And Lisa, that's the key part of this. Offering that ramp, as David noted, that giving that permission structure to say, okay, and it's hard for some Republicans. I mean, you know, they're really baked into the infrastructure of the GOP. So to then make that leap, you need that line of encouragement that says it's okay, because you're not necessarily just voting for the man, you're voting for the country, and that's the important part of this.
Now, the reason they're doing this sort of outreach, and you see it even with the Biden administration, the reason they're sort of doing this, and you see it with the Biden administration's PR arm, which is CNN and MSNBC, is that they're pivoting to the center. They're pivoting to trying to speak to the supposed, this imaginary Nikki Haley supporter, the white soccer mom that lives in the suburbs, that's moderate. That's sort of who they're pivoting, and that's what this segment sort of speaks to. They're trying to convince more Republicans, because I think they see the writing on the wall as far as Michigan. They see the writing on the wall as far as the uncommitted vote and the abandoned Biden movement. They see the writing on the wall with the support in the poll after poll. That's not getting better for Biden when it comes to Black people under 39 in particular, when it comes to young people under 35 in particular, when it comes to the Arab and Muslim population and those in solidarity with them in Michigan. So they have to pivot to try to get a different voter. And that's what we're seeing in the coverage and the PR arm of the establishment, which is cable news, and on the liberal side, it's CNN and MSNBC. Let's listen to a little more, and then we got an article to kind of read over.
Well, and it was notable to me. We've pulled apart a lot of the former president's speech from last night, but there was one piece of sound, I'm not going to play it, I'm going to paraphrase it for you, that I also thought was worth discussing, which is, as we all know, you have President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris out there saying that, they worry about the future of American democracy and American elections should Donald Trump be reelected. He's now out there trying to make the same argument to his base, saying, I don't think you're going to have another election in this country if we don't win this election. I don't think you're going to have another election, or certainly not an election that's meaningful. I mean, David Jolly, I would talk about the gall, but
yeah, so, and this is what the Trump administration has been doing for the last several months. They're taking they're taking the democracy talking points that the liberal establishment has been using against him, and they're using them now. Like, he's using that, I don't think there's going to be more elections, democracy is going to be ending. They're using that. And I remember Rep. Stefanik, I forget her name, Elise Stefanik, went on Meet the Press, and she said something in the realm of this also, where she said, I feel like democracy is going to end if we elect Joe Biden because of this, and this. So they're starting to flip the democracy argument, like, oh, you said it's going to end. No, it's going to end if you. And you're seeing it reflect in some of the speeches that Trump has been saying, and that's what she's pointing out here. Let's continue to listen.
It's the least of what we've seen.
Yeah, and let's identify how perverse that is, because he never says why. Why would there not be a next election, right? When Democrats and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris say there might not be another election, it's because democracy itself is on the ballot, and Donald Trump will wreck our constitutional democracy. Why is it the end of the republic if Donald Trump loses? Is it because his voters refuse to accept the election? Is it because he unleashes violence in the street? Why, Donald Trump, is it the end of our democracy, is a very pressing question
Right,
for him.
finish the ellipse.
Yeah, that's right.
How do
That's
you
right.
complete that thought? Though, as you might have noticed in the speech, he had a lot of trouble completing thoughts.
Yeah.
Right. You know, for someone, Michael Steele, who likes to talk about other people's mental acuity, he couldn't seem to get there.
This so blatantly obvious attempt to laugh about Donald Trump's mental acuity as if that's the same thing as what's happening to Joe Biden. Like this, it is so transparently bad. Like, you guys aren't that good of actors, and it's so transparently bad. It's a difference between mental acuity, your mental acuity being here. Let's say both of them are here. It's difference being your mentally acuity being here because you're just stupid. And it's a difference between your mentally being acuity being here because of a cognitive decline. But they're trying to make it seem like it's the same thing when everybody and their mama can see the difference in Joe Biden.
There himself.
The man can't string together a complete sentence.
Here we go.
I mean, I've had more than one person say that to me over the last few months, that at the end of the day, everyone's focused on Joe Biden speech pattern. He has a stutter, folks.
Oh, here we go.
He has a stutter that he tries to control. What's Donald Trump's excuse?
Oh, my God. So the Joe Biden has a stutter has made an appearance again. Oh, God. He went there. Joe Biden has a stutter. Okay. Let's continue.
Because I'm telling you, he can't do it. And so it really kind of raises a number of flags for me, David, around this idea of how people perceive these two individuals, right? At the end of the day, you're looking at Donald Trump and Joe Biden as men who are going to run the country for the next 4 years.
Right.
And within that body of voters, you're finding this phenomenon that has been tagged or labeled double haters, people who, you know, a pox on both their houses. How does that dynamic change? Because Alexei raised the question.
So double haters, this is a term you're going to be hearing a lot during this election. Double haters are people who reluctantly picked someone even though they hate both choices or both corporate choices, both mainstream choices, equally or slightly equally. They hate both choices. So those people are called double haters. And I believe, they might clarify me, and maybe I'm misquoting this, but I believe from my memory, Donald Trump won the double hater. No, I'm sorry. Joe Biden won the double hater. I'm sorry. Let me back up. Donald Trump won the double hater when it was him against Hillary Clinton. He won the double hater category. He had a higher percentage of the people who said, I hate both candidates equally. He ended up getting a higher percentage of that. In 2020, Joe Biden ended up getting a higher percentage of that. They're afraid, because I think he's polling higher right now. That's Donald Trump, that is. They're afraid he's going to get that group. And I believe the guy in the bottom left-hand corner, the former Republican rep, is going to mention that. I believe in this segment. It might have been another segment, but I believe. Let's listen.
The question of people possibly staying home. Is that what we look at with these double haters? Is there an opportunity to break into that a little bit and to get them to hate one a little less than the other? What are we doing here?
Yeah, there is, and that's a big concern. And first, let's take the first part of your question, which is, I think voters wrongly conflate age and fitness, right?
Yes.
They're both old. Joe Biden's old, but where has his age been a limitation? As James said about a previous administration to voters complaining, what are you so upset about, the peace or the prosperity? Because where has his age limited either one? It hasn't. With Donald Trump, it's fitness. Yes, he's as old as Joe Biden, but
it hasn't limited him in campaigning. It hasn't limited him in speaking. Is it going to limit him in a debate? Is he going to debate Donald Trump? Is it limiting him in his choices that he's making in what he's selecting to do? For example, with supporting Israel. So for this guy to pretend, but this again, this is the desperation that I was telling you about. Obviously, most of this shit that they're saying about Joe Biden and the dynamics of the race is just a make-believe story. But this is what they have to push as they're looking at the polls, and he's still losing. The polls have not gotten better.
But the question is around fitness. So somehow now voters, we have these double haters, and where they move could actually decide the election.
Yeah,
but I'm
there
going
he
to use
goes.
this opportunity now to take a gratuitous swipe, if I could, at no labels, because their choice will be either Biden or Trump, or stay home, or look at a third party. And what no labels has constructed could ultimately swing it to Donald Trump for a couple reasons. In the most likely scenario, they withhold votes in key electoral college states that then swing that state or secure that state for Donald Trump. If they are ambitious enough and successful enough to actually win a state, to win electoral votes and throw this thing into the House, Donald Trump becomes president, and the Republican, likely flipped Republican Senate, picks a Republican vice president. That's where these double haters, if they get entertained by a no labels movement, gets very dangerous for Joe Biden.
We're going to talk about no labels a little bit later in the show, but I do want to make sure that we talk, Alexi, about this Axios focus group. These were Wisconsin swing voters who were, among other things, blaming the GOP for the failed border bill. With those interviews, so these are Trump voters from 2016 who flipped to Biden in 2020. And the good news for Democrats here, Alexi, is that it seems
we're not gonna watch that. It's such a bogus focus group. It's like it's so bogus. Let's pull up the accompanying article that they mention in that segment, and we're gonna pull up that accompanying article now, and it's called the Double Hater article. I guess we can call it the double. Is this the right one? Yeah, Double Hater article right here. It's from Politico. Where is it? Here we go. Here we go. Double haters might decide the 2024 election. So let's see. Maybe I'll read a little bit of it, and then I have another article here. Let's read a little bit of this. If President Joe Biden wants to squeeze out a polling deficit, he'll need to secure the votes of some people who don't like him very much. The good news is many of these voters don't like former President Donald Trump either. They might be the most important group in the 2024 election. Call them the double haters. I'm a double hater, but I'm not voting for either one of them. Voting third party. I'm the double hater that's voting third party. I hope that all of you are a double hater that's voting third party. Should get that on the shirt. Double haters. Let's read. Double haters. Voters who are unsatisfied with both Trump and Biden make up roughly 1/5 of the electorate. Recent polls from the Marquette Law School and some other polling entities all reported the same number, 19%. That's a huge chunk in a race that's likely to be tight. Demographically, the group resembles the general electorate, although it leans slightly younger and more Hispanic. Double hater. Slightly younger and more Hispanic. There are also an equal number of Democrats and Republicans in this double hater group. These double haters have been an important group for multiple election cycles. This year, with both candidates' favorability ratings plummeting, the number of voters who dislike both major party candidates may surpass the previous high watermark in 2016. This is what I was mentioning earlier with Hillary Clinton. Let's continue. Back then, Trump won a bigger share of the double haters than Hillary Clinton, outperforming her by 17 percentage points among the group that made up 18% of the electorate. So again, 18% of the electorate, I think I'm saying that right. When Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were running against each other, Trump won by 17 percentage points. Biden turned the tables in 2020 and won the group by 15 percentage points. Granted, they only made up 3% of the electorate then. So you see, it was only 3%. Yeah, it was smaller. Look how much smaller. That's something like 5 times smaller. 18% versus, that is, yeah, 18% versus 3%. So if the percentage goes higher, will that lean to Donald Trump? According to the exit poll. And he continues to have a 45% to 33% advantage. That is Trump. This year, however, a third-party candidate seems to be a far more popular option, at least for now. Most importantly, double haters are a volatile group of people willing to change their minds up until the last minute, posters say. In an era of starch party loyalty, they are outliers who are capable of switching up their allegiance with every new cycle. Such volatility can present a golden opportunity and also a real challenge. Most double haters who say they'll vote third party actually have little knowledge of who those third party candidates are. According to the Democratic poster, that's according to a Democratic poster, of course. Celinda Lake, I think that's how you say her name. And more information in the coming months could very much change their mind. Trump runs the risk of reminding voters of why many of them voted to toss him out in 2020 as more information trickles out about the trials. Quote, their dislike of Trump seems more durable, more intense, more non-negotiable, whereas Biden seems a little milder, perhaps. He has more ability to turn it around, Lake said. Quote, so I think it represents an opportunity. This is spin. This is called spin. In this election, Biden and Trump aren't each other's biggest rival with this group. It's the couch. So you hate both. So it's not like one is tempting you for the other. You hate both. So that couch is looking pretty good. Why the fuck am I going to get up and go vote when I hate both of these motherfuckers right here? I'm supposed to stand in line for an hour for fucking Trump or Biden? That's essentially the reaction of some people here. Now, I am going to end it there. That's a good point to end this article. If you want to go check it out, it's called Double Haters Might Decide the 2024 Election. That's all the part of that article I wanted to read for this presentation. Let's go into the next part. And the next part I want to get to is the reason Joe Biden is having to resort to these things, and you're seeing segments like this, is because of the Israeli policy that has affected so much of his base, from the people of color. That's one separate contingency. Then is young people under 35. They call that young people under 35. Then it's progressives. And there's one other group. People of color, progressives. Oh, Arabs and Muslims. So let's go to this next article. This is the original article. The other one I just kind of inserted in. It wasn't part of my original plan. But this is the original. This is the article I did want to go to, because this is what Joe Biden is trying to do. He's trying to play both sides here, and it's not working out well for him in the polls. people aren't fooled. It turns out you just can't say a bunch of shit, and then the people who know the most about this issue on Palestine and Israel, which I would say the people who are marching in the streets, are the people who know the most about it. You can't fool them with this empty rhetoric. You can't fool them. So let's talk about the absurdity of Biden's Gaza policy. And this is the headline here. The tragic absurdity of Biden's Gaza policy. The U.S. government is making elaborate plans to ameliorate a humanitarian catastrophe that would not exist without its own bombs. So, and I have some of it snipped out, and I'm going to be reading along the side here. So let's, how much? I got a good chunk of it. I don't think I got all of it. Maybe I got the whole article. Let's see. If I did, it's not long. Let's read it. So, since Israel's campaign of death began, President Joe Biden has perfected the art of cognitive dissonance, planting story after story about his ever-increasing frustrations with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, while continuing to send Israel the bombs it is using against the people of Gaza. It's the handing bullets and weapons to the murderer while at the same time trying to console the people that the murderer is killing and bombing their area. That's essentially what this administration is trying to do, because they have a large constituency of people that are now disaffected and that right now saying they're not going to vote for him. These are the number one reasons that's contributing to his low approval rating, to him losing in battleground states, and to him losing in the must-win state of Michigan. Democrat cannot win without winning Michigan, period. Let's continue with the article. But the past 7 days have taken this absurdity to new levels. That's because this was the week when we saw both Biden's most dramatic attempts to appear to be radically shifting his approach and the most dramatic evidence of just how deeply the United States is helping to perpetuate this war. First, the attempts to telegraph that change is happening. Biden used his State of the Union address to announce that the United States would be building a pier off of Gaza's coast so that it would deliver aid to millions of people who are either being massacred or left to starve to death due to Israel's increasing or unceasing bombardment and total siege of the region. He was then filmed telling Senator Michael Bennet that he was going to have a come to Jesus moment with Netanyahu, though he immediately undercut the seemingly accidental nature of the broadcast by adding, quote, "I'm on a hot mic here. Good," end quote. The fakest hot mic moment ever known to man. On Saturday, Biden went further, telling MSNBC's Jonathan Capehart that Netanyahu was hurting Israel more than helping Israel. We covered that interview. And that an Israeli invasion of the southern Gaza city of Rafah, where 1.4 million Palestinians were trapped, would be a red line. All of this was enough to prompt some of the White House more how do you say that? Psychopath. Let me see how you say this word here. One second, people. I got to hear. And I am the one that stops reading to look up words. I do this. Ooh. Wow, that's terrible. Okay, so let's continue. Some of the White House more sycophantic chronologicers such as Axios reporter Barack Ravid to proclaim that Biden was breaking with Netanyahu. This is the shift. And some of this I'm going to go more in depth in it in the next sort of broad segment of scapegoats, because you hear it in this article too, where they're already trying to shift blame and make this a Netanyahu thing. The genocide is only because of Netanyahu and not the overall project, the colonial project. But let's continue. And it's true that these moves could seem like an encouraging signal about his willingness to put some kind of pressure on Israel. But wait, what's that sound? That would be the other shoe dropping. The most important news about the American handling of the war in the past week could be found not in any of the aforementioned highly choreographed moments, but in a pair of reports on Tuesday in the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal, in which the outlets revealed that not only has the United States been transferring vast amounts of weapons to Israel, but it has been doing so in a way deliberately designed to evade public scrutiny. That's when he was shipping those weapons, and as long as it's under a certain amount, they don't have to tell anybody. So they did it 100 times purposely. Because why wouldn't you just put all of that together and have one shipment, 2 shipments? But you having to keep them under a certain level so you don't have to tell anybody, and you just do a bunch of them, over 100 of those. But they also talk about it here. According to the report, the U.S. has approved more than 100 arms sales to Israel since October 7th, constituting what the journal called tens of thousands of weapons. But the Biden administration has revealed only 2 of those deals to Congress. The rest have been masked by one of the oldest, shadiest financial tricks. So let's recap. Biden publicly lamenting the scale of the death in Gaza, going after Netanyahu. He's doing that on one end. And pledging to build a maritime aid corridor to get aid to Israel. So he's helping them, right? But Netanyahu's ability to carry out the level of carnage, he couldn't do what he's doing and impose such an inhumane siege is dependent on the continued flow of weapons to Israel from the government headed by Biden. But they want to tell you this is Netanyahu's fault. They want to make you believe that Netanyahu's doing something they don't want them to do, that they disagree with. Oh, let's continue. The U.S. government is now making elaborate plans to ameliorate a humanitarian catastrophe that would not exist without its own bombs. When you add the fact that Biden's government is not only sending Israel weapons, but is so eager to do so that it is purposely skirting congressional oversight and public accountability, it all gets even more ludicrous. We're no longer in a simple, quote, this makes no sense situation. Instead, we've arrived at a Twilight Zone, quote, if I try to rationalize this, it will tear a hole in the fabric of space and time situation. It's as if you kept secretly handing an arsonist gasoline and matches, then showed up 5 minutes later with the firefighters read out a statement about how unconscionable arson is and announced that you were taking major steps to help the survivors. That is a fantastic analogy from this article, but that's essentially, not in a nutshell, because that was not a long read, but a decent read, what the Biden administration is doing. So this pivot to scapegoat Netanyahu is just part of this messaging strategy to trick people. That's all our government does. They change. They're going to keep the policy because the policy is irrelevant to what the peasants want to do. We just change our messaging around the same strategy that we're doing. That's what the Biden administration is doing and what is pointed out in this article. Now let's go to the next part of this. And so you have Joe Biden struggling in the polls, largely because of his stance on Israel support for this Gaza genocide. And so you have people that say, "Hey, I'm not voting for Donald Trump. I'm not voting for Donald Trump, and I'm not voting for Joe Biden. I'm not voting for either one of them." So and then people are like, "Are you going to stay home, or are you going to vote for somebody else?" There's some people that will stay home, but then there's some people that will vote third party, and I'm one of those people that will vote third party. And for those people, David Pakman has a message for us. David Pakman is saying voting third party in 2024 makes no sense, and he's going to explain why it makes no sense to him. Where is the David Pakman here? Let's see. All right, so here's David Pakman on this issue, and let's play his video now.
Let's go to Janelle in San Antonio. Janelle in San Antonio, welcome to the program. What's going on with you? What's on your mind?
Hi, David. I'm so glad that you called me. Well, there's a couple things, if you have a minute.
Well, let's start with the first one and see where we get.
The first thing that I wanted to say, I hear a lot of I'm 48, so I'm older, but I hear a lot of the Gen Z younger people saying that they're going to vote third party.
You can already hear the anger in her voice, the disdain. She's like, "Yeah, those Gen Zers." You can already hear it in her voice, but let's listen. Let's give her a chance, because I know we have a lot of Gen Zers that are watching, but we have a lot of boomers. Our audience is pretty evenly spread out. So, and we take we take pride in that we're reaching a lot of different demographics. But she's not happy with the Gen Zer. So let's listen to what she says.
So I'm older, but I hear a lot of the Gen Z younger people saying that they're going to vote third party because they're real upset about what's going on with Israel.
Yep.
And I'm so glad, I'm so happy that the younger generation is thinking globally and that they care about other people. It's beautiful. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Except
but
for
I
us.
would really like to plead to them and beg to them. Right now, we're choosing between an authoritarian takeover or keeping democracy.
When you say authoritarian takeover, would you count banning TikTok as an authoritarian takeover? What about the Twitter files? Now, banning TikTok, that's not happening under Donald Trump. And Donald Trump isn't the one that said, if Congress passes a bill, I'll sign a TikTok ban. This is Joe Biden administration authoritarianism. I think that's how you say it. Anyway, let's listen to the rest of what she says here.
Right now, we're choosing between an authoritarian takeover or keeping democracy. I'm sorry, but the third party candidate that you're going to vote for is not going to win. So basically, you're wasting your votes.
I actually don't think I'm wasting my vote. I think you're wasting your vote by voting for a genocider and a person who says I'll commit the same type of genocide even harder in Trump. You are the one wasting your vote. if you vote for any one of them. My vote is not wasted by voting for somebody who's not for a genocide. I think that's making my vote very valuable. So I have, my family has a remote. So let's listen to some more of what Pakman says here.
And I'm pleading you all to just go ahead and vote blue and get rid of this authoritarian crap. And then after that, you know, get motivated, get organized, and save the Middle East, save the world.
Is this serious? So in this scenario, and I would pose this to David, Pakman, and the caller, in this scenario, how do you get rid of genocide in this scenario? Isn't that a legitimate question? If the scenario is both of them are genociders, so we're just going to vote for one. You see how we're now baking genocide into the system. If our country puts up two genociders, shouldn't we go, we don't want to vote for any one of these? We reject you even offering this to us. If we put up, let me put it in starker terms, maybe it'll shock you into understanding, those who are on the fence of this. If we had two Hitlers, like if they were cloned and they were running against each other, how do you register your discontentment with Hitler? What are you really picking by picking the other one? Because regardless of who you pick, you won't, there still would be millions of people who don't have health care. There still be billions of dollars being sent overseas while people here are starving, while people here are going unhoused. And the homeless population has gone up 12%. We did a reporting on this last year, the end of last year. It is amazing. It's if you don't make a stand here in a lesser of two evil argument, when will you make a stand? If both of them are genociders and all you say is he's going to genocide with a Muslim ban, and we're supposed to pick off of that, I'll take the genocide without the Muslim ban, and we're supposed to go, we won? I don't get this. And genocide with all the stuff that he's about to say, all these good things that could possibly happen, not that are going to happen. And I hate how they keep messaging like, if you're for abortion rights, vote for the Democrats. And what are they going to do? What exactly are they going to do? They don't have enough people to get any bill that's codifying abortion rights at all. So voting for you does what? Because you message that you're on my side during election time? I'll let it play a little bit longer.
The world, that's what I really want. That'd
Yeah,
be
and
great.
by the way, Janelle, if you care about others and your vote is driven by empathy, consider all of the, seniors whose Social Security and Medicare might be cut if Trump were to get his way now.
If Trump were to get his way. It's the if Trump were to get his way. So you're supposed to sacrifice your humanity by not voting for a genocider because the possibility of a already underfunded system being even terribler, and that's a made-up word. So you're giving up principle for possibilities of crumbs. Not even the guarantee of crumbs, the possibility of crumbs.
Now that he's talking about entitlements, women whose autonomy and rights could be taken away, children whose educations will be further eroded if Donald Trump, right? babies who are not going to get the care that if you
complete
care about other people, think about the impact that taking an action that helps Trump will have on so many people right here in the United States as well. And it's not about just.
Couldn't we have said the same thing before Joe Biden got elected? Think of all the people you're going to impact. All the brown people you're going to impact by electing Joe Biden, because he's going to up the deportations. All the people you're going to impact because Biden is going to have an executive order that eliminates asylum. All the people you're going to impact with the war with Russia that's going to send prices skyrocketing. All the people you're going to impact with or the planet that you're going to impact by increasing the military budget by billions of dollars. We could have did the same thing with Joe Biden and every president, because it's the same agenda by the same people that they're executing.
Just, we only care about people within our borders rather than outside of them. It's, listen, I can speak for myself. I care about Palestinians, and I care about the Yazidi, and I care about those victimized by the Syrian civil war, and I care about the Rohingya and the Uyghurs and
the Uyghurs. That tells you how serious he is about this. The made up Uyghur genocide.
What's happening in Ethiopia. I care about all of it relatively equally. And when I vote for the president of the United States, I'm primarily thinking of, right, those other places have leaders. I'm voting for the president of the United States. What are my options here? What's going to happen here? That's the way I think about it.
Right. Very selfishly, very white, chauvinist, country centric. Yeah, just me.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better, David. You always have the right words.
All right, Janelle, thank you. I appreciate you making the point.
There's people who listen to him who thinks he made a point. You just heard her in that breakdown. Okay, I guess he made a point. But I'm not going to play the rest of the video. I think the point that he was making has been made. And I'm going to move on to the next part of this presentation. And the next part of this, I'm going to go back to Twitter and go to this other article. And this is the latest article. Do I have the... Where do I have... Oh. 1 second, everybody. But I think I initially saw it. I think I did initially see it with Nina Turner. That's why I saved it. I think I did. So, but you see the headline. Let me blow it up a little bit here. And this is what we're going to be talking about next. And it flows right into the conversation. Where is it? Here we go. All right, so let's now move into this. Here's the headline. Behind the scenes, Biden has grown angry and anxious about re-election efforts. So Biden is looking at the polls. The polls are not getting better. The polls in some cases are getting worse, especially on the economy. It's getting worse. His approval rating is not moving. And it's largely because of the people, his base, who's not supporting him. The young people under 35, people of color who are abandoning him, Arabs, and Muslims, progressives, is a large constituency that has abandoned him. And now that, you know, they're leaking that, they're under some pressure here. Because in corporate media, every time these polls come out, we got plenty of time. We're a year out. We're 9 months out. Now we're 10 months out. Now we're 9 months. Now 8 months out. You get what I'm saying? And now it's coming out that they're panicking. And let's bring up the full article. This is just a headline. So I think I have it up here. Yeah, I have it up on the last tab here. So let's go to this. What is this? NBC News article, and it's behind the scenes. Biden has grown angry and anxious about re-election efforts. And here's the subheadline: Biden locked up the Democratic nomination last week, but looking ahead to the general election, anxiety has seemed to increase. We're gonna listen to. Is this a commercial on here? Yeah, let's wait for this ad to be over. Because this is part of another part of it. Yeah, we can listen to this. This is short. So let's listen to this before I play before I read the actual article part. Let's listen to this because this is kind of what it's based on. Oops. 1 second. I gotta turn the volume on here.
Is losing to former President Trump. Basically, our reporting says that Biden has grown angry and anxious.
Okay. I want to set this up the right way. All right. I think it's acting right now.
About his reelection efforts, Simone. Is that what you're hearing in your conversations with Democrats?
Doesn't let me go back. Okay. There it goes. All right, my apologies. All right, now we're queued up. Let's play it now.
Are getting this new reporting about the Biden campaign and about President Biden himself and how he is taking, especially all of these polls, which show him in some cases losing to former President Trump. Basically, our reporting says that Biden has grown angry and anxious about his reelection efforts. Simone, is that what you're hearing in your conversations with Democrats?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, if I were running for election against a person.
What's happening here?
Like Donald Trump, who has as many issues as he has and has committed as many alleged acts of criminality as he has, and I would be, you saw polls that said I was losing to him. Even I would be like, well, what is going on here in America? And so I have heard the frustration from Democrats, but also that they do believe there is time and opportunity to get their message out now that it is a one-on-one, Trump and Biden, make that contrast so that folks understand their choice come November.
He's got to drive the message, though. I mean, Biden's got to make the case every day against Trump, almost as though he's more of the challenger than the incumbent, right? He's got to sort of do that, prosecute the case against Trump.
How do you do that from the Oval Office? That's his challenge.
Look, I think you have to have an army of surrogates out there helping you every day. And I think you also have to try to get out there and do it yourself more aggressively. But there's so many examples. Just take the TikTok case where Trump changes his mind on banning TikTok, clearly in part because of the influence of a billionaire with a stake in TikTok. If you're a Democrat, how do you not scream that from the rooftops? This is brazen corruption.
You know how you don't scream that from the rooftops? Because they're not Republicans. This guy's a Republican. So Republicans, which happens all the time on mainstream media, giving advice to Democrats. That's why you go, why is they giving them some freaking way off? Because that's a Republican, and this guy is a conservative here, saying, why aren't you bringing up this thing that part of your constituency thinks you shouldn't be banning as a good thing? And he doesn't see why the Democrats doesn't do that. Because part of their constituency is young people, and why would they want to piss them off?
happen. But where is that aggressiveness? I think it still remains to be seen if Biden can prosecute the case.
I think that there's two angles that they can take here. One is this democracy angle. I would submit to you, I don't think it's working. I don't think it's working.
They would argue it has in the past. They would say it did in 2020 and 2022.
Well, abortion rights in 22 was more helpful.
And abortion is part of the democracy argument.
The biggest intervening factor between 2020 and 2024 has been inflation. And that has come into effect, and people really feel the impact of that. So unless the Biden team goes directly on the economy and talks about how a second term of President Biden would potentially be better economically than a second term of President Trump, I think that's the argument that they've got to go to. And I get it. It's a tough argument to make because most people are inclined to believe that Trump's better on it.
Who was so dependent upon his opponent to win re-election. I mean,
yes, but this is not a normal election.
Of course it's not.
This is not a normal time.
Right?
And so I
Look
think
at Trump's comments yesterday. Yeah.
Well, yes, exactly. Talking about the January 6th criminals as hostages, promising a bloodbath, demonizing immigrants, saying they are not human. So I just think this isn't a normal election.
That's the best bet for Biden, by the way.
The democracy plus what you're going to do for the voters is what is going to speak to them, I believe.
All right. Great conversation. You guys didn't need me here at all. Thank
it's your table. We're happy to be here.
Yeah, we didn't need you guys. Yeah, you're right. We didn't need you guys here at all. All right, so let's dive into some more of the article. But this is what it's based on. That was the article she was referring to. How do I close this? So let's read a little more. It might retread some of the stuff in the video, so bear with me. In a private meeting at the White House in January, allies of the president had just told him that his poll numbers in Michigan and Georgia had dropped over his handling of the war between Israel and Gaza. So they had told him his poll numbers had dropped in January. Let me make sure it looks big enough for everybody. Yeah, so I'll continue. Both are battleground states, Michigan and Georgia, that is. For some reason, they're calling Georgia a battleground state when there's no chance they're going to beat Georgia, win Georgia, in my opinion. Both Georgia and Michigan are battleground states. He narrowly won 4 years ago, and he can't afford any backsliding if he is to once again defeat Donald Trump. He began to shout and swear, a lawmaker familiar with the meeting said. So he's mad. You think he's going to go out and do something? Well, what do these people want? A ceasefire? Okay, they get it. No, that's not how it happened. Let's continue. He believed he had been doing what was right despite the political fallout. He told the group, according to the lawmaker. Asked about the episode, Andrew Bates, a White House spokesman, said, quote, President Biden makes national security decisions based on the country's national security needs alone, no other factor. That's them saying, trying to blame them not changing course here on some sort of national security. Bogus. For months, Democrats have watched the 2024 campaign unfold with rising alarm as the sitting president struggles to gain ground against his defeated predecessor. Frustrations rippling through the party have reached the top, with Biden at times second-guessing traveling decisions and communication strategies that have left much of the electorate clueless about his record. Interviews with nearly 20 lawmakers, president, and past administrative officials and Biden allies show. Not looking good. The panic has set in, and they're finally letting it leak out that he's mad, which means this is now they're saying this is in January, and it's finally getting out here in mid-March. So back then when they were told, we're not panicking, they were panicking, and they're still panicking, and the uncommitted vote put more panic in them. The starting gun for the general election campaign fired last week as Biden wrapped up the Democratic nomination. Yet he is still searching for ways to impress upon voters that he deserves a second term by dint of policy achievements that eluded past presidents. History suggests it will be tough for him to recover. Biden's 38% approval rating at this stage in the calendar is lower than that of the three presidents who went on to lose election. The three who went on to lose, his is lower. Trump, 48%. That's an outlier because I think Obama won with 45%. So that's an outlier. George W. Bush, 39%. Jimmy Carter, 43%, according to Gallup survey data. Biden has long believed that he isn't getting sufficient credit for an economy that has created 15 million new jobs, looking to reach distracted voters who may be tuning in. He told his speechwriter before the State of the Union address to tone down some of the lofty rhetoric and plainly lay out what he's done. A person familiar with the speech preparation said. Now, 15 million new jobs. It's funny how they take credit for 15 million. You take credit for jobs added after we lost millions of jobs. You forget, Joe Biden, during the pandemic that we lost millions of jobs. Millions of jobs. You forgot about that? So how many millions of this 15 million new is just regaining ground that we already lost, that you want us to give you credit for? I continue with the article. During the internal discussion, he'll press aides about which part of his record to highlight in different states, said a second person who was familiar with the matter. Surrounded by protective aides who want to minimize the chances of a flub, the 81-year-old president has chafed at restraints that he sees a counter to his natural instinct as a retail politician. A third person familiar with internal discussions said. Now, they're just saying from these sources, you don't know. You never know with these sources. He has felt cocoon at times and has been eager to get out more, meet voters face to face, and take the fight directly to Trump, said the third person and fourth, also familiar with the matter, who like others spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss campaign strategy and the president's private views. Now, what happened was you have people call them, come out here. You're not going to quote me on record, but here's the story. Make sure you put it out. This is essentially how it works. There are signs that some within his party are also losing patience with him. Quote, Biden stood up in front of the whole world and said, I'm ready. I'm the guy who can take down Donald Trump, said Adam Smith, the Democrat of Washington. Quote, so he goddamn well better do it. We don't have time for him to be worried about whether or not people are saying things right or the poll numbers are where they should be. I want focused energy and not defensive anger. That's from Adam Smith, Democrat of Washington. Eminently beatable. Biden has on occasion directed his ire at his tight-knit senior staff. You mean he's flew off the handle, as he's been known to do? Given the successes he has had in the past, given the successes he has had in passing consequential bills and improving the economy, Biden was irritated that his message wasn't sinking in with the broader electorate, the sources said. The same thing we covered with the Bill Maher segment, that he's mad that people aren't saying the markers that you say makes a good economy. I'm going to go ahead and say it's a good economy, even if that's counter to what my personal experience is. He wants you to do that, and he's mad about that. 8 months before the election, Biden campaign team remains confident about his chances. A memo that campaign manager Julie Chavez Rodriguez sent out in December suggests that it was always the plan for Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris to start ramping up campaign travel earlier this year. Something that is now happening. Since the State of the Union speech, Biden has traveled to Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania. He'll be heading to Nevada and Arizona earlier this week. Quote, the president and his advisors have all been eager for him to get out, and they're more and planned for to take place at the start of the election year, as has been the norm for past incumbents seeking re-election. They're trying to play it off like, oh, we're not doing this because we see the polls are terrible. We're just doing this because. I'll continue here. Biden AC Trump as an imminently beatable and deeply flawed opponent. In a recent campaign call with reporters, the campaign chairwoman, Jen O'Malley Dillon, said Trump appears to have little interest in attracting voters beyond his most faithful base. Quote, we know that he lost in 2020, she said. Quote, in order to win, he's got to expand his base of voters to find new people to be with him. And that it's not something he's shown that he's really focused on. Now, this is obviously a fluff piece. This is obviously a piece to make you believe he's mad and he's going through the emotions about his poll numbers. This illustrates how these news outlets aren't really news outlets. They're just mouthpieces for the establishment. And I guarantee this story, somebody in the White House just simply called the guy up, hey, a person up, and hey, I want you to run a story, come down, I'll give you the details. And voila, we see this story. Quote, a little mad at himself. At times, Biden gets suggestions that conflict with one another. Some advisors have told him he should walk faster out of concern that his gout feeds impressions that he's too old. And we've all seen him, how he walks. And now they're trying to make it seem like his walking is not because he's trying to stay balanced, because he is cognitively declining. You can visually see that. A person walking like this. You get what I'm saying? It's so, and these flimsy reasons they're trying to make up for him is just preposterous. But I'll start here. So one advisor told him he should walk faster because of the certain concerns that the way he walks with his gout would feed impressions that he's too old. And yet the White House is sufficiently worried about him tripping that he has taken to boarding Air Force One via a shorter staircase through the belly of the plane. Foregoing the iconic image of the president waving from the main doorway high above the tarmac. So he takes a shorter stairwell than the normal one because of this fear that they have. So, quote, he's probably a little mad at himself for not being more forceful with his staff, for making the suggestion of taking the shorter one. So they can see you fall down the stairs, sir? A person familiar with the internal discussion says. Privately, Biden questions whether he should trust his gut instincts over the guidance coming from the array of advisors tending to his political interests, this person added. So whether he should start going with his gut feeling instead of going with the advisors. So he's now trying to throw his advisors on the bus saying, it's your fault. I went with what you said, and look where we're at. Now I'm going to go with what I said and see how that turns out, Joe Biden. See how that turns out. This is an unmitigated disaster waiting to happen. So I'll read a little bit more of this. This is really just a fluff piece about Biden, but I'm going to skip to this last section here. A failure to communicate. A consensus of Democratic officials is that Biden needs an army of surrogates to spread the word that his record has improved Americans' lives in concrete ways. He can't carry the message alone. Andre Dickens, the Democratic mayor of Atlanta, said that Trump's bluster tends to soak up the attention, but Biden's record is actually making streets safer. Do you mean like Cop City? This is the fucking douchebag Atlanta mayor that's cooning for Cop City. He cited spending bills that enabled his city to pay retention bonuses. Here we go. To police officers and underwrite youth programs that help to curb crime. You can't read this. Quote, coming after a blowhard like Trump, who tells you every day that he hates and tells you every day what he hates and what he likes, Biden is soft and calm and getting the work done, Dickens said. Letting voters know is, quote, the job of the mayor and county leaders who have benefited from the Biden administration policies. So the mayor of Atlanta is saying it's time to get out and start cooning for the president. That's what the mayor of Atlanta says. But this article lays out how they are in panic mode, that and that they're going to turn up the Biden is terrific propaganda on, I don't even know, on level red. Like this is a top level, send everybody. I'm seeing Nancy Pelosi in a bunch of interviews now because they are deathly afraid that their shit is not working. It's not moving the needle. Nothing's going to move the needle more quickly and more profoundly than switching policy on Gaza, switching policy on Israel, which they're not going to do. They're simply not going to do that. So they're just going to send surrogates out to lie and say, look, your lives have improved. Believe your own eyes and not what they're telling you. Let me just say that. That's my suggestion moving forward at the coming to an end of this article is believe yourself, believe what's happening to you. Don't go off what they're telling you. You should go off of. Believe what's happening to you. That's all, that's all I can say here. Now we're going to switch gears and talk more about, like I said earlier, I needed to kind of set up why they need to now pivot to scapegoating Netanyahu. All of these reasons. You see the policy of what Biden has with Israel. You see the effects it's having. You see the polling. You see the panic in this article. You see sort of the over-the-top panic in the segment I showed you about the show called The Weekend from MSNBC with Michael Steele and Simone Sanders. So now they're going, okay, we're not changing policy. Let's blame Netanyahu. There we go. That's the new plan. Blame Netanyahu. Ready, break. And this is the plan they are now executing. So let's move to that part of it. And here is Caitlin Johnstone's latest, which speaks to that. And then we're going to start with it. This is a short, under 5-minute video. But this video speaks to the point that I'm making, and that is the scapegoating of blaming this on Netanyahu. Let me see if I got another one here. Another item here on Netanyahu. I do not. Oh yeah, but that's later on. Okay. All right, but before I do that, let me read a couple of super chats so I don't get too backed up here. Let's start from the bottom. Worthless mainstream media doesn't report on Biden's. Oh, DOJ case against Ushuru? Yes, the Ushuru tribe. You know, remember what's his name? We had him. I think Sabby had him on her show a couple of times. The leader of it, I forget his name. I'm sure somebody will put it in the chat. But the leader of the Ushuru movement, Hiruro socialist movement. Sabby had him on a couple of times, I believe. But yes, that is a great point. Thank you for the super chat. Unemployed scholar. Let me go to the next one. I'm sorry, I need to speed this up. Janice, what's up, Janice? Thank you for the super chat. Regular. Vote blue no matter who. Psychopaths. I'm sorry. Sycophants need to. I need to get some glasses. Sycophants, I think that's what it says, need to either look up the definition of authoritarian or just stop using the word. Both Dems and Republicans are authoritarian, exactly, but Dems are worse because the vote blue no matter who covered them up. That is a great, great point. Janice, thank you for that super chat. Here's another one. Unemployed scholar. Let's be blunt. Biden administration is a murderer. I think that said murderer. I gotta putting off getting glasses here. If everyone that is currently a vote for the couch learn about Jill Stein and vote for her, she'll win in a landslide. So Justin B, thank you for the super chat, is saying if you are currently in the mode of I'm gonna just stay home on the couch is gonna win. Think about voting for Jill Stein. That's what Justin is saying here in the super chat. And then Biden 71 with a super sticker. Thank you for the super sticker, always showing love. I'm going to play this video partly. The rest of my eyes are kind of tired. And let's read. This is a lot of great comments here. Loving the discussion in the chat. But back to the presentation here. Oh, hit that like button. Make sure we get to 800 likes. 800 likes is the target. But because of what's happening to Joe Biden, because of the Biden administration, and because of the protests, and because of the pro-Palestinian advocates that fall into categories of people of color, Black people who aren't supporting Biden because of it, young people, progressives, all of these categories of people, because they're not going to change policy and they can't necessarily get all of them, they want to change messaging and try to fool some of those people who are on the fence. Just fool them. Well, they said something good, because a lot of people fall into that category where they're virtue signaling, and that's enough. And here, and so enters the pivot to blaming it all on Netanyahu. And this is Caitlin Johnstone's take on this. And it's titled, "They're really going to try to lay all the blame for Gaza on Netanyahu." And she talks about how ridiculous this is. Let's listen to Caitlin.
They're going to try to lay all the blame for Gaza on Netanyahu.
I don't know. It felt like that wasn't the beginning. Let me go all the way back. Maybe it was a split second.
They're really going to try to lay all the blame for Gaza on Netanyahu. Notes from the edge of the narrative matrix. They're really going to try to pin all the blame for the incineration of Gaza on Benjamin Netanyahu so that nothing has to change when this is over. The Western Empire has chosen a single scapegoat to carry away its sins so the status quo can march on unhindered by guilt or consequence. They want everyone to pin all the blame for the Gaza genocide on Netanyahu, but this is not all the fault of Netanyahu. It's the fault of the entire state of Israel. It's the fault of Joe Biden. It's the fault of the Democrats. It's the fault of all the Israel supporters on Capitol Hill. It's the fault of the Western press. It's the fault of the Israel lobby. It's the fault of the unelected empire managers in U.S. government agencies. It's the fault of the entire U.S. empire and all its imperial member states like Australia, the UK, the EU, and Canada. By trying to make this mass atrocity solely the fault of Netanyahu and not the giant, sprawling network of immensely powerful institutions which made it possible, they are working to ensure that no changes will need to be made to any of those institutions. It's like how they made a scapegoat of Judith Miller for the entire mass media's war propaganda in the lead up to the Iraq invasion, and let all the blame for the war hang on Bush, before completely rehabilitating Bush's image during the Trump administration and deciding he's a pretty great guy after all. No meaningful changes were ever made to ensure that the U.S. power alliance never repeats its horrible crimes after Iraq, which is why it keeps repeating horrible crimes. The trouble with Israel apologia on Gaza is that at first its talking points sound legit if you don't know much about Israel-Palestine. Israel has a right to defend itself. They need to get rid of Hamas because of October 7th, etc. Would sound entirely reasonable if you didn't know that Israel is a settler colonialist apartheid state who has been murdering, abusing, and stealing from the indigenous population of the land for generations. The amount of energy needed to see through the talking points is far greater than the amount of energy needed to speak them. It's one of those a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth even gets its pants on kind of deals. Which is why it's miraculous that so many people around the world are getting educated enough to see through the lies and support the Palestinians. How are they getting educated enough? Mostly through online content, which sums up the situation quickly and concisely enough for them to understand easily. That's the only way the truth can move quickly enough to catch up with the lies. And that's the role TikTok has played here, which is why we've seen Israel lobbyists and the ADL shrieking their lungs out about it for months. It would never have occurred to any American to think TikTok is a 5-alarm foreign enemy threat until their government told them to think that. And then when they did, the biggest bootlickers in the world started acting like it's a common sense fact they've always believed. Americans who'd trust their own government to oversee their communications more than they'd trust China have missed all the most important lessons about the US government that have come out in their lives. Even if China really is getting data from TikTok, and there's currently no evidence that it is, only a groveling empire simp would object to it. Saying TikTok must be suppressing pro-Israel content because pro-Palestine content is more popular is like saying they're suppressing flat Earth content because round Earth content is more popular. Pro-Israel content is just less popular in general, which is why the gap is the same on Facebook and Instagram. The US government is like, no, it's not censorship. We're just using state power to ensure that popular speech platforms are only allowed to exist if they can be controlled by US government agencies. Israel has done so much fucked up shit in the last few days, we've already forgotten the news that they literally tortured UN staff to extract false statements about UNRWA having Hamas connections. They tortured UN staff. If we had anything remotely like objective news reporting in the Western press, this would have been the top story everywhere for days. Once you see how evil Israel's actions are, you start to understand why its defenders need to resort to just calling everyone who criticizes Israel a Jew hater. When Israel apologists say anti-Semite, it's just a meaningless noise made to hurt the feelings of the person it's said to. Once you realize this, it starts to land in exactly the same way as any other infantile name-calling from anyone else who has lost the argument.
That's such a perfect ending by Caitlin Johnstone. And we're going to go to the next part of this. And I love the way she breaks down how this is not just Netanyahu's fault, how the narrative they're trying to trick people into believing this. But it's a bunch of people, the whole apparatus of the Western alliances, the Frances, the Britons, all, it's the whole alliance that has blood on their hands. Not this one. Let's go to this one here. So Chuck Schumer participates in this scapegoating. Chuck Schumer comes out and says this speech, and the reason I'm not playing just the speech because in the content we're going to be watching, they're going to play the speech a couple of times, so we're going to see it. But Chuck Schumer comes out and says this speech on the Senate floor scolding Netanyahu, basically saying there needs to be new elections so we can get Israel can chart a new way forward. There needs to be elections, and that Netanyahu is an obstacle to peace. That's the phrase that they're attacking him on. So Chuck Schumer, who is the top-ranking Jewish elected official, is what they keep saying. To me, that's Anthony Blinken. Some reason they're saying the senator is above him. Anthony Blinken is the one that's really running shit. But anyway, here's the headline: Chuck Schumer's Senate speech and the U.S.-Israeli final solution in Gaza. So let's read a little bit from this, and then we're going to get to Netanyahu's reaction, and that's video. So let's read this a little bit of this article, and then, like I said, we're going to get to Netanyahu. Now, my eyes a little bit chance to rest. Let's see how we go here. The statements by Biden and Schumer are political ploys. They're talking about, okay, so let me say this. Chuck Schumer makes his speech. GOP pull their hair out. Netanyahu responds. But Joe Biden is asked, what do you think of that speech? And he says it's a good speech. And a lot of people, agree with that sentiment. He doesn't say he does, but that is Joe Biden's reaction. So when the article says this part, that's what they're talking about. It's saying the statements by Biden and Schumer's statement on the Senate floor and Biden's reaction to that, those are political ploys whose purpose is to cover up the fact that the administration is deeply complicit with the Gaza genocide, which is overwhelmingly opposed by the vast majority of the world's population. Despite their criticisms of Netanyahu's policies, and that's Schumer and Biden, both Schumer and the White House made it clear that their statements did not reflect any change in U.S. policy. Both of them made it clear. Policy's not changing. We're just saying some shit to fool some people. And then they go, the U.S. would continue to provide weapons to Israel without any conditions, U.S. officials stressed. The speech was closely coordinated. Now, they're talking about Chuck Schumer's speech. Chuck Schumer's speech was closely coordinated with the White House, with Biden saying Schumer had contacted my senior staff. Biden added it was a good speech which expressed serious concerns shared by many Americans. In the course of his remarks, Schumer admitted for the first time that the members of the Israeli government have stated their intentions to carry out the ethnic cleansing of the population of Gaza. Israeli Foreign Minister, I'm not even going to try, an Israeli Defense Minister, Ben Gvir, I think that's how you say his, are clear in their desire to displace Palestinians from their homes and replace them with Israeli settlers, Schumer said. This is Schumer saying this. These statements are a staggering self-indictment. Israeli officials called for the immigration of Gaza Arabs to the countries of the world on November 14th, the same day that Schumer was a headline speaker at the March for Israel. Remember that Washington, D.C., when they thought that the protest was going to be a one-time thing for pro-Palestinian, so they had a pro-Israel one. Schumer spoke there on that day. To the chance of no ceasefire, Schumer told Israel, "We stand with you. We will not rest until you get the assistance you need." He implied that left-wing opposition to the Gaza genocide was anti-Semitic. On that day, the death toll from Israel's onslaught on Gaza stood at 11,500, Since then, a further 20,000 Palestinian men, women, and children have been killed. Schumer and the White House provided over 100 arms transfers totaling billions of dollars to fund and arm a government that had publicly declared its intent to ethnically cleanse the population of 2 million people. It is time to call things by their right name. The Netanyahu government is carrying out the final solution of the Palestinian problem. Regardless of the occasional and cynical finger wagging in Washington, it is doing so with the support of the Biden administration and both political parties in the United States. So, yeah, all right. So that article sums up what the purpose of the Chuck Schumer speech was about. It sums up the purpose. It was highly coordinated with the White House. So they knew exactly what he was going to say. This is all a dance to pretend like they're against Netanyahu. How can you come to a Jesus moment with Netanyahu at the same time send him 100 secret weapons sales? Those two things don't go together. They're incompatible. What's the next part? Okay, so the next part is a interview. This is Netanyahu goes on. Is this the State of the Union? It's CNN, regardless of which show it was on. To respond, yeah, State of the Union. This is what Dana Bash, and he goes on here and is going to respond to Chuck Schumer's speech. So let's listen to this report.
Here with me now is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's start with that potential deal, sir. 100 hostages are still being held by Hamas. You're sending that negotiating team to Qatar in the coming days to talk about a potential deal, free hostages in exchange for a 6-week pause in fighting. As you know, Hamas is demanding the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners in exchange for roughly 40 female hostages. Are you open to that? Are you close to a deal?
Well, time will tell, but Hamas's outlandish demands, and I'm not itemizing every one of them now, makes that deal a lot more difficult. But we're going to keep on trying because we want those hostages back. We understand also that the one thing that gets Hamas to give them is to give these hostages to us is the continued military pressure that we're applying there.
To continue
we're going to
genocide.
continue military pressure, and we're going to continue to try to get those hostages out. And we've succeeded already in bringing half of them out. I hope we continue along that same course.
Let's talk about what happened here in the U.S. this week. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer gave a pivotal speech and said, "You have lost your way," and called you an obstacle to peace. Take a listen.
The Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th. And I believe that holding a new election, once the war starts to wind down, would give Israelis an opportunity to express their vision for the post-war future.
Chuck Schumer is the highest ranking Jewish elected official here in America, a staunch supporter of Israel. What's your response?
I think what he said is totally inappropriate. It's inappropriate for to go to a sister democracy and try to replace the elected leadership there. That's something that the Israeli public does on its own. We're not a banana republic.
This is such a non-thing, how these pseudo-democracy gets so offended by civility. You notice how the fights between the ruling class is all about civility. There's nothing tangible difference. It's like, oh, this is totally inappropriate to be making comments, to be talking. It's all about crossing these imaginary etiquette lines. And when you do, you have a reaction to that. It's not at all anything tangible. But that's what he's saying. This is, you shouldn't say anything. And this is largely what a lot of GOP, a lot of conservative reaction. Hopefully I'll get to that.
Here in America, a staunch supporter of Israel. What's your response?
I think what he said is totally inappropriate. It's inappropriate for to go to a sister democracy and try to replace the elected leadership there. That's something that the Israeli public does on its own. We're not a banana republic. I think the only government that we should be working on to bring down now is the terrorist tyranny in Gaza, the Hamas tyranny that murdered over 1,000 Israelis, including some dozens of Americans, and is holding Americans and Israelis hostage. That's what we should be focused on. And as far as what Senator Schumer said, the majority of Israelis support our governments. 82% of Americans support Israel instead of Hamas, but the majority of Israelis support the policies that we're leading. Go into Rafah, destroy the remaining Hamas terrorist battalions, make sure that we don't put into Gaza, instead of Hamas, the Palestinian Authority that educates their children towards terrorism and the annihilation of Israel, and also an enormous majority here, including 99 Knesset members to 9, oppose the idea of ramming down a Palestinian state down our throats.
I want to get to some
the
of those
majority of
polls.
Israelis.
So he's trying to squeeze in as much propaganda as he can, as if anybody here cared. Like, this guy has a low approval rating, lower than Nancy Pelosi, lower than, I can't even think of a person. It's lower than the overall Congress. So it's just an awkward position, but he's here trying to fit in as much nonsense lies, Israeli lies, as he can, and she's trying to move on. And this is an ally. He's like, okay, listen, bro, I'm with you, but this is too much. Let's move on to the next thing.
This is a wake-up call to Senator Schumer. The majority of Israelis support the policies of my government. It's not a fringe government. It represents the policies supported by the majority of the people. If Senator Schumer opposes these policies, he's not opposing me. He's opposing the people of Israel.
Okay, I'm going to get to some of the polls that you cited in one moment, but I just want to make sure that our viewers understand that Chuck Schumer gave the big speech, but he has support in many ways from the President of the United States. President Biden is a self-described Zionist. Even he is starting to distance himself from the way you are handling the war. He called what Schumer said a good speech. He said that he shared the concern of many Americans. They aren't criticizing Israel. They're criticizing you and your right-wing coalition.
Dana, there's a fallacy that is being perpetrated here. And you should take polls, you'll have your own polls, and check whether the people of Israel support the policies that I'm being criticized for. That is, supporting the policies of going into Rafah, destroying a quarter of the remaining Hamas terrorist army. That's like leaving a quarter of the Nazi terrorist army in Germany and saying, no, we're not going to finish the last quarter, and we're not going into Berlin. Most Israelis overwhelmingly support the position that we have to go in. They oppose the idea of ramming down a two-state solution or a terrorist state against their will, because they think that this will endanger Israel's future. They support.
And he's right. All of what he's saying as far as the government, yes. Israel, this country full of Zionists, yes. They have been, and I've covered this many times, Jewish people who, or Israelis, I should say, not Jewish people, but Israelis who were brought up a certain way, and then they came to find out the truth, and they were shocked how they figured out that they were getting indoctrinated with lies. So why wouldn't the people believe to commit a genocide if that's that's the whole culture, that's how they've been raised? So anytime they have these polls where they're saying, well, the polls say this about immigration, what do you expect the polls to say about immigration when you sell brown fear to white people who have been indoctrinated with a country that I mean, I don't think it's disputable that it's began its origins being racist against the indigenous people, enslaved people. That's the DNA. So, but anyway, let's not get off topic. Let's stay on topic. Let's listen more to what Netanyahu says here.
Those policies that I'm putting forward, and to present that as something that is, I'm an outlier, it doesn't represent the majority of the people of Israel, is simply a fallacy. And I'll tell you the other fallacy is, they're saying, well, most Palestinians don't support the Hamas massacre. In fact, 85% of the Palestinians do support, unfortunately, the Hamas massacre. So they've got two fallacies here, and you can readily check that. The majority of Israelis support the
So he's saying that it's bad that the majority of Palestinians support the military attack that Hamas pulled off on October 7th. But the support for the genocidal campaign, that is good. One is good and one is bad, but it's certainly not the one you're saying, sir. He's saying that high support by Hamas is bad, but the high support of the genocide by Israelis is good.
policies that I have on prosecuting the war, which is what I'm being criticized for.
Well,
so it's not just me. It's
I think
the people of Israel who believe that we have to have this resolute victory to assure a future.
I think that what you're being criticized
we have the
for
Palestinians
is not
that haven't aligned
prosecuting the
themselves
war.
with peace yet.
It's the way that you're prosecuting the war. So I'm going to get to that in 1 minute, but I just want to add a little bit of sort of context to the way that the Biden administration is pushing back. Another way is that the U.S. intelligence community warned that, quote, distrust of Netanyahu's ability to rule has deepened and broadened across the public. And then back to the polls, you're talking about support for the idea of toppling Hamas. That makes perfect sense. There were other polls in Israel, 3 major Israeli television stations that said what Israelis also support are early elections. That's what I really want to focus on here is Senator Schumer not calling to sort of topple the government, but specifically says, when the war winds down, will you commit to calling new elections? That's my question. Will you?
Dana, 2/3, first of all, what you said is wrong. The vast majority of Israelis oppose early elections until the war doesn't end. We've just had many polls on that. Look, a lot of the polls are twisted.
Channel 12 says
guided.
He says, so he says the polls are lies, that those are wrong, this and this, and then he says, then he tries to go in, the polls are all made up. He says 2 different things within 3 seconds of each other. Let me see if I can get it again.
Are twisted.
Channel 12 says,
okay, let's see if I can get it again. I'm gonna rewind it back here.
Said is wrong. The vast majority of Israelis oppose early elections until the war doesn't end. We've just had many polls on that. Look, a lot of the polls are twisted.
Channel 12 says,
guided by
Channel 12 says 64% of Israelis support early elections.
But all polls show that's not. No, I'm afraid that they asked them the question, do you support it during the war? And they said no.
But that's not what Schumer is calling for. He's calling for new elections when the war winds down.
Well, we'll see when we win the war. And until we win the war, I think Israelis understand that if we were to have elections now, before the war is won, resoundingly won, we would have at least 6 months of national paralysis, which means we would lose the war. If we don't win the war, we lose the war. And that would be not only a defeat for Israel, but a defeat for America too, because our victory is your victory. We're fighting these barbarians that are not merely threatening the survival of
when
Israel,
the war
but
winds
threatening
down?
everything that we hold dear together.
Will you commit to new elections when the war
I think
winds
that's something
down?
for the Israeli public to decide. But it's not something. No, look, that's something for the Israeli people to decide. I think it's ridiculous to talk about it. It's like after 9/11, after 9/11, you're in the midst of fighting the war.
Yeah, our elections, nothing happened with our elections. I don't understand. Why do they have to announce elections? Why don't you have just a normal process? Why isn't that just happening? Why are you pausing elections? That's weird. How is that democracy? And you're still calling Israel a democracy? You're pausing elections? They only elected you for the term that they agreed upon before you took office. Now you just I'm gonna go bypass this because of emergency reasons. When the election, because the reason you keep elections, because what if the people want to go in a different direction than the current people in office executing whatever the war plan is? You want to have elections because if the people want to go a different direction, they would elect somebody else. If they want to say, hey, we like what you're doing already, then it reinforces the person who's already in office. So this sounds very much like Ukraine. The clown show that's over there at Ukraine.
I think that everything that we hold dear together.
Will you commit to new elections when
I
the
think
war
that's
winds down?
something for the Israeli public to decide. But it's not something. No, it's look, that's something for the Israeli people to decide. I think it's ridiculous to talk about it. It's like after 9/11.
Now he's mad.
You know, after 9/11, you're in the midst of fighting the war against Al Qaeda, and an Israeli would say, you know what we need now is either new elections in the U.S. or if your system doesn't allow, then President Bush should resign and we should have an alternative leader. You don't do that.
Well, let's
you don't
talk
do
about
that to,
why.
A sister democracy, to an ally. You don't talk about that. What you do talk about is how do we help you defeat what President Biden called sheer evil. You don't just stop after you destroyed 80% of sheer evil. You
Right.
destroy
So-
100% of sheer evil.
She's not buying any of that. She's like, yeah. Let's move on. She wasn't buying any of that, and that was the end of their clip. They clipped that. That wasn't a special edit. That's directly from CNN. So they clipped it at that point. But you see his reaction and the pushback. Now, understand, this is all a dance. He knows he's to come on TV and pretend like he's getting scolded by American media. That plays well here. This is all a dance that he is perfectly fine participating in. Like he's coming on and getting attacked by a reporter and he's getting mad. Like this is all for show. Don't buy into it. Next part is wait till we get to this one here. Now, you saw Netanyahu's reaction to Schumer's speech. GOP has similar reactions, calling them, why are you criticizing another democracy? I know Mitch McConnell chimed in. I know Speaker Mike Johnson chimed in. But I was watching Fox News to get their reaction, and I came across something that is unbelievable when I say it. And let me see if I can find the banner here. Here it goes. GOP says Gaza is the two-state solution. So we're asking about a two-state solution. They said Gaza is an example of that two states. That's Gaza. And his name is Byron something. He's the black GOP, one of the black Negro coons, part of the GOP. He's from Florida. Byron something. I forget his name right now, but they're gonna say it in just a second. Byron Donalds. That's it. Possibly up to be a vice presidential pick for Donald Trump is what I hear. But let's listen to this segment on Fox and Friends with Byron Donald, and he says Gaza is the two-state solution. He says a bunch of other crazy shit, but let's listen. This is the GOP reacting to Chuck Schumer's speech, the fake speech where they pretend that they're pivoting. They're blaming Netanyahu. And you see, this is how the GOP participates too. Now, the GOP, they know damn well that Joe Biden is keeping all the same policy, but part of them playing the dance is pretending when the other side says they did something, it's to pretend to have a reaction as if they actually did something. So, and that's what we're having here with the GOP, is pretending this is actually something when they know damn well the policy change stays the same. Here we go.
It is clear that Israelis need to take stock of the situation and ask, must we change course? At this critical juncture, I believe a new election is the only way to allow for a healthy and open decision-making process about the future of Israel.
That was Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer urging America's best ally in the Middle East, Israel, to get rid of Prime Minister Netanyahu as it fights to defend itself against brutal Hamas terrorists. And Joe Biden, afterwards, when asked about it, said he supports his remarks. Well, our next guest calls these comments out of line. His name is GOP Congressman Byron Donalds, a supporter of Israel as well. Byron, Congressman, thanks for being here. What do you make of this? I mean, it was staggering to see Schumer go to the floor, say what he said, and then for Biden to back him up.
Good to be with you this morning. Look, out of line is just the start of what I think. You have the Senate Majority Leader trying to interfere in the election process and destabilize the country of our ally, Israel.
Trying to interfere with the election process. Do I need to bring back up the Ali Velshi video where he shows 346 members of Congress are bought off by AIPAC, Israel representatives? This guy, this is a stock photo of a Negro servant. This is the up and coming Negro servant class. On the red side, Byron Donalds. On the blue side, Jasmine Crockett. These people have surpassed my worst fears. Both of them have surpassed my worst fears.
I mean, what the heck is going on? That's not his job. His job is to make sure that we actually find a way to help fund Israel, not stand as an obstacle to Israel doing what they need to do, which is in their national interest, which is to obliterate Hamas. This is the same Chuck Schumer who goes around whining and crying about the Russians and everybody else involving themselves in our elections. And let's be clear. I don't want other countries involved in our election process. It should be decided by Americans and Americans alone. But he has no problem going to the Senate floor to talk about what's going on with Bibi Netanyahu and the current government of Israel. But this is indicative of a broader point. The Democrat Party supports Hamas. They do not want to see an end to Hamas. They are more concerned about Israel removing Hamas from Gaza than actually supporting Israel in that position. They would prefer to have a deal with the Iranians. They would prefer to let the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas continue to operate regardless of the security threat to Israel.
Yeah, I mean, this is the leader of the Senate also browbeating the Israelis, saying you need a two-state solution. This is something you're hearing for the administration as well.
Let me get you. The two-state solution is a conservative sort of right-wing solution to this issue. The left perspective is one state, and that state is Palestine. If you're Israeli and you want to stay there, you can stay there if you like. So, but Fox News is rejecting the conservative solution, which is a two-state solution.
Wouldn't it be the Israelis and the voters there that would decide what leaders they want and what kind of outcome they want? Because the idea of two states hasn't worked very well.
What?
Of course, and let's be very clear. Gaza essentially was a mini two-state solution.
Byron Donalds, up-and-coming Negro servant for the red team, says Gaza was the mini two-state solution. Maybe he doesn't know what two-state solution means. He can't, because Israel controls all entry points. Israel controls. How is that a two-state solution? Israel, IDF all throughout Gaza. Where's the sovereignty? Where's the statehood? So what is he talking about? Let's see if he explains. Let's see if he explains what he means.
Would decide what leaders they want and what kind of outcome they want, because the idea of two states hasn't worked very well.
Of course, and let's be very clear. Gaza essentially was a mini two-state solution. They voted for Hamas almost 15 years ago. Hamas has been running the place. They've been stealing the humanitarian aid that the United States, the UN, and everybody else has been sending over there. They've built military tunnels. They've embedded weapons amongst civilians, amongst children. So this has not been an experiment that has worked for Israel. Let's be clear. In my view, the only thing that's going to matter when it comes to peace in the Middle East is what President Trump was doing with the Abraham Accords, where he had Israel and other Arab nations finding peace agreements and then finding ways to deal with each other in economics and in trade. That was actually creating peace. Empowering Iran the way the Biden administration has done, similar to what the Obama administration was doing, has been a disaster for Israel, and it's been a disaster for the Middle East.
It's been upside down, no doubt. By the way, we're going to have Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on our program live today at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time to respond. Congressman, I want to get your thoughts on one more thing, because the House Oversight Committee says it's going to proceed with this week's hearing with or without Hunter Biden.
So they go back into the silly talk, the Hunter Biden shit. So, but you see the conservative reaction. Let me see. I might have another video here. Let me see if I have any other ones. But you see their reaction, because this only had one reaction. Let me see if I want to play another one here. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, I don't have anything great saved, so nothing where the point hasn't already been made. So let's go back to the next part, or let's move on to the next part of this presentation. You hear Byron Donald's reaction to the speech, and that is the of the up and coming people. I told you about Negro servants. This Byron Donalds is the example on the red team. Then you have Jasmine Crockett, but you also have Ritchie Torres. And Ritchie Torres, more commonly known as AIPAC Demon Spawn, goes on CNN to talk about why the TikTok ban is needed. And let's listen to this clown. I mean, this guy is one of the people who has just sold his soul, so happily sold his soul, and he don't give a single fuck whatsoever. But let's begin this segment. Ritchie Torres is an AIPAC demon spawn, and let's listen to this jackass.
You voted in favor of the TikTok bill today. Explain your thinking to our viewers.
In favor of the TikTok bill.
Millions, if not tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people who love the app and don't want big government infringing on their right to use it.
Well, the legislation is not about the use of TikTok. It's about foreign ownership of TikTok. ByteDance ownership of TikTok is a threat.
It's not about the use. It is about the use if you're banning it. How can it be used if it's banned? So that is exactly what it's about. And then he goes into the core cover story that there's a security concern where they cannot produce any concern. What is the concern? It's just a spooky vibe. Well, it's China. That's it. There's no substantiating that. So I'll let him make the point, but he began to make the point. It's, some scary boogeyman known as China.
Of TikTok. ByteDance ownership of TikTok is a threat to the security of the United States. ByteDance is subject to the control of the Chinese Communist Party. ByteDance owns TikTok. And TikTok is not merely a social media platform, it is the leading news source for the next generation of Americans. And the fact that we have put the leading news source for the most impressionable minds in our society in the hands of our leading foreign adversary, the Chinese Communist Party, is an act of self-sabotage. That would have been the equivalent of allowing a Soviet company to control ABC, NBC, and CBS during the height of the Cold War, which would have...
What? ABC, no. What is he? So he comes in with a completely establishment talking point that has not been substantiated. It's just accusations. And then he makes a comparison that's apples and oranges because he names actual news platforms where their job is news. That is their job. And he's saying that being ran by a foreign entity. That is absurd. This is a social media app where people share news peer to peer. That's how they get it. They're not getting it from an original broadcast from TikTok. So even in a comparison, he's lying. So this is just a slick salesperson who's fine with getting paid. And he's like, I'll tell whatever lie I gotta tell to get paid. I don't give a fuck. Give me the money. Pay me my money. I don't care what I got to say, whatever. That's who he is. That's Ritchie Torres.
Which would have been unimaginable.
What kind of threat do you see happening? What give me an example of the kind of thing either you have seen on TikTok and you suspect it's because the Chinese government has influence, or what you fear?
Well, first, there's a consensus throughout the intelligence community, from the FBI to the CIA, that there is a national security risk with ByteDance control of TikTok. So that's not a...
It's a consensus amongst the liars. Because when they say intelligence agencies, you can literally just substitute intelligence with liars, the liars agency. You're talking about some of the top lying entities on the planet. You mean those people said something without any evidence? Which they haven't, actually.
It's not a matter of dispute within the federal government. I have two concerns. First, there are more than 170 million users on TikTok. The Chinese Communist Party could easily access that data under the national security law in China. ByteDance.
What data? I have a Twitter account. My real name is not there. Nothing there is real. So what are they accessing here? What? Like Nick says, what are they going to access? Cat videos? It's a social media platform. It's not a platform where people are doing they're doing things that require divulging social security numbers and addresses. That's not done on TikTok. So what information are they getting? Or can they get is the question.
ByteDance would have no choice but to cooperate with the Chinese Communist Party. And then second, TikTok could be a tool for information warfare. China could easily use TikTok to conduct foreign influence operations against the United States. So both data privacy, data security, and information warfare are causes for concern.
So he prepared all of his talking points. Now, since Jake Tapper's not a real journalist, this could easily be swatted down by anybody who's been doing journalism for 12 months, who just knows superficially stories. This could easily be just slapped down what he's saying, but that's not Jake Tapper's job.
We just heard from CNN's Mark Stewart from Beijing. He says the Chinese government is accusing the United States of acting like a bully. What's your reaction?
I mean, there's no greater bully than the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, it consistently coerces and intimidates and bullies American companies based in China. And the Chinese Communist Party would never allow the United States to control the leading media platform in China.
No, it's not the leading media platform in China. It's the leading, I'm sorry, in the United States. It's the leading media platform in China that American users use. You can't be upset that Americans like this Chinese app and platform better than American bred platforms. You can't be mad at that. Make the platform better. And you can't make it better with U.S. censorship. So this is, I don't know how a guy at his age, because he should be more in line with people who are under 30, 35, under 40. He should have views, and his views are so Pete Buttigieg. They're so like geriatric. His views are so geriatric for his age. It's so bizarre.
TikTok used the app to encourage users to contact their lawmakers and tell them to vote against the legislation. Did you get a lot of calls and messages?
Look, every congressional office was flooded with calls, but TikTok
And
is
they don't
telling
care.
lies. It is spreading misinformation.
And they don't care. That's a great democracy that's not responsive to their constituents. That's awesome. Where can we get some of that democracy? Ritchie Torres is disgusting. Let's let him finish out. 15 seconds here.
The legislation is not a ban on TikTok.
It
a
is,
forced
you
sale
damn
of
liar.
TikTok. Under the legislation, TikTok will have the ability to continue to operate. TikTok users will have the ability.
They don't want to.
Create
They don't want to
content
sell
and express.
They don't want to
themselves.
sell.
This is not about content. This is about foreign ownership of TikTok.
So, all right. So that is Ritchie Torres. Torres, the garbage piece of you know what that he is. Everybody hates this guy. Like everybody hates this guy. Let's see if I have any reaction. Let me see if I have any reaction. Where is it? Ritchie Torres. I might have one or two. I don't remember. Oh, this is Sabby. Ritchie Torres works for Israel, not the U.S. Always remember to follow the money. No, I won't look and see if there's any more. I think that's enough for Ritchie Torres. Let me see if I got everything here. I think there's one more, or that could have been it. Let me see what I got. What stories did I hit? I hit the Scapegoat. I hit the Blame Net. I hit the Ritchie Torres, Bill Maher, David, Pakman, Double Haters, GOP 2 State. I hit the Netanyahu response to Schumer's speech. Biden angry and anxious. Corporate media desperation. Wow. Got to all of it. I'm squeezing a lot more into my shows because I'm only doing 2. So, you know, a lot of people are watching the content on replay or on a clip. So appreciate that. But I'm trying to squeeze a lot more content into these streams so that we have a lot more clips to cut. Okay. All right. Let me read some more super chats here. Before I do that, let me just do a quick what's happening on Twitter. That's Rome's new profile picture. Nick tweeting out something. That's Lee Camp. This is Assault pointing out something at the State Department. Douglas Russell from Due Dissidents. Here is Rokana coming on the Bad Faith. That guy is just stupid. That guy. Anyway, I don't have anything good to say about Rokana, so let me not say anything here. All right, so I don't see anything breaking as far as video, so I don't need to put anything up to play on our way out. Is this a yeah? I'll probably play this one. I'm going to play this one from the Midwestern Institute. It says the Marxist analysis of the state of Israel. So I'm going to play this on the way out, but it's not time to go yet. This will be my ending video. Let me read all of your super chats. Make sure you stick around to get the reading of your super chat. Don't go anywhere without getting that. So let's do that. I guess I'll start from the bottom again. So we have 10. If any other ones come in now, this is it. This is the last one. So let's read. It says, I feel that all Zionists love to say, because they will get a cookie from AIPAC, ADL, for speaking that word during an interview. Deeply unserious. I feel that. Oh, I get what you're saying. Hamas. I feel that all Zionists love to say Hamas because they will get a cookie from AIPAC ADL for speaking that word during an interview. Deeply unserious. That's ARJ 1997. Thank you for that chat. Here's another one here. Corporate media is trying to introduce the narrative that there are good and bad Zionists, where Biden is the good one and Bibi is the bad one, and a new Israel PM will stop future atrocities. Yeah, ain't that some bullshit? Another one from ARJ 1997. That is a great point you make there. Thank you for this super sticker from Maria. And then a brand new member for 3 months, Ed Royce. Welcome. And it says, Ham Saban is the most powerful Zionist. Hamas Saban, I think that's what he said. Thank you for that. And then here is another super sticker, James Starks. Thank you for that super sticker. And we're all caught up on the super chats. Thank you for everybody that contributed. Now, I'm going to bring this back up, but make sure you go to our website. Make sure you do that. Our website. When you go to our website, do I have it here anywhere? I do. When you go to our website, here, our main tab is RBN About, RBN Chapters, RBN Library, Media, Summits, and Outreach. When you click on RBN Merchandise, you get to see all the merchandise we sell. Along the right-hand side, if you need to check out our social media, you can do that. But this is the website, and I will put the website scrolling there at the bottom. Now, when you click RBN Merchandise right there at the top right-hand corner, you get our merchandise website, or the RBN shop. There's 11 designs. So on the mug, you can get, for example, let me make this bigger. So on the mug, you can get, for example, the regular RBN logo. You can get completely unserious. You can get Abolish the Police. And you can get these same designs on mugs. You can get them on tote bags. This one is another Abolish the Police. This one is a Vote Blue, no matter who, is for morons. This is a All Cops Are Bad mug. And then a Lesser of Two Evil Ones. This is a Democrats and Republicans Can Kiss My Ass. And it's a post-duopoly mug. So all of these same things you can get put on. Here's the NATO is a terrorist organization and class warfare is needed. You can get those same graphics on tote bags, and you can get the same graphics on clothing, like here. And when you click, let's go to one that has different colors here. Let's go to this one here. So here's the hoodie. Let me make this a little bit bigger so it fits in the screen. Here's the hoodie here. Comes in gray. You can get it in black. You can get it in red. That's the color that Nick got. So check out our store. You can locate that on RBN, on revolutionaryblackoutnetwork.com. Also, support us if you like our content, if you like our channel, and you can afford $36 a year. That's $3 a month. You don't pay $36 up front. You just pay $3 a month on Patreon. check out our Patreon, join, become a member of our Patreon. And then that might be it. Get us to 800 likes. Much appreciated. And I'm going to be getting out of here now. Okay, yeah, no more super chats. Okay, so there was nothing else. All right, everybody, I'm out of here. I'll leave you with this video from Mint Marks Institute. Let me put it back up. Is it right here? All right, everybody, have a great rest of your Monday. Don't forget tomorrow, Nick at Night, 9 p.m. Tomorrow, Nick at Night, 9 p.m. And then it'll probably be like 5 or 6 clips uploaded tomorrow. So make sure you check those clips out. Here goes Midwestern Marks. Here goes Eddie.
Break that down. Talk about the historical context behind the recent events, which is what the Western media always leaves out. They never give you the historical context because in order to lie about these things, they have to isolate events from the historical factors that created them. Right? They can't use the Marxist historical materialist method where we look at historical developments which lead to events, which lead certain events to happening. And analyze things that way, right? That's historical materialism. That's Marxism. What the media does is the opposite of that. They take the event, they isolate it, and they say, look at these terrible Palestinian terrorists. Look at what they've done to the fine, upstanding white people of Israel. How could they do this? How could they do this? Leaving out, 70 years of occupation, apartheid, oppression, mass murder, missiles launched at civilians and children, right? You just leave all that aside. And then you say the armed group fighting Israel isn't a resistance group. It's not a group fighting back against U.S.-sponsored apartheid and colonialism. They're terrorists. So we're going to break that down because once you know the history, the media can no longer lie to you. That's why they're trying to suppress us on TikTok, but they'll never win. An important area for trade and production, which we're Marxists, right? We are materialists. So we have to look at how these geopolitical conflicts, how these events stem from production, stem from trade, from the production and distribution of the things that humans need to survive, right? And this area, even dating back to the Roman Empire and previously, was always very, very important for trade and very, very important for production. And great powers, great empires have always tried to control it. So that is what Israel is for the U.S. and for Great Britain. It is a neo-colonial outpost in an extremely important economic region that allows the U.S. to protect their economic interests in the area, which is the interests of multinational corporations and bankers, finance capitalists, and protect their geopolitical interests, which is why Israel's always attacking Iran. They're enemies with Iran, always launching missiles into Iran, always launching missiles into Syria, always launching missiles into Lebanon. Enemies of the United States who Israel helps the United States to pester and attack and threaten regime change towards in the Middle East as Israel continues to expand. So that's why your government is giving Israel $3 billion a year.
I will not support anyone who supports and funds genocide. Then you're going to be the reason Trump gets reelected and then all your rights will be taken away. I will not support anyone who supports and funds genocide. Well, when the Republicans get in office, they're going to go ahead and make this back to Jim Crow South, and Black people won't have any rights. I will not support anyone who supports and funds genocide. I understand I am anti-genocide too, but it would be way worse if anyone else was in the office that isn't blue. I will not support anyone who supports and funds genocide. You think the Republicans won't kill Palestinians? They'll kill more. I will not support anyone who supports and funds genocide. We need to think about us and only us in this country. You think they'd care about you? Oh, for the love of God, I will not support anyone who supports and funds genocide. They brought this on themselves. You're just anti-Semitic. I'm still not supporting anyone who supports and funds genocide.
DNA tests are illegal in Israel. Ask me why.
It's even illegal in the state of Israel to obtain this. And if you do obtain it, it's illegal to show it and or talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, my DNA. Now you might ask yourself, why is it illegal to obtain this in the state of Israel? Because it proves through your DNA that Jews around the world have no ancestral ties to the land of Israel.
I mean, duh. It doesn't take a PhD or an article from a Jewish newspaper to tell you that Caucasians practicing a religion aren't native to a place where people have been brown for millennia.
This TikTok caused a storm online, with many debating what his results, which show no trace of being from Palestine or the Middle East, despite being Jewish, mean. Yet, in the state of Israel, getting hold of a genealogical DNA test is highly restricted. Yet Dov Aharonoff and the Jerusalem Post reported in 2019 that Israel's genetic information law blocks people from buying them from local pharmacies.
I guess boomer Zionists think that if you just throw enough money at troll farms and you don't let people Google 23andMe in Israel, that they'll forget that they're not Middle Eastern. Like, it's not Jesus of Williamsburg, it's Jesus of Nazareth, right? I mean, that's fine. Like, there are dark Jews. There's Jews from Brazil, there's Jews from Ethiopia, and up until the 19th century, everybody was living in Palestine pretty peacefully. Well, I guess until the Nakba, when they got displaced or killed alongside the Muslims and the Christians. I guess even back then, in the middle of the desert, if you have a brown neighbor, I guess property values go down. I don't make the rules, but they sure as hell are racist as So then, if Caucasian Jews don't come from the Middle East, where do they come from? I do not want to be called anti-Semitic, even if I've got Harvard in the background. So I'm just going to let another Ashkenazi geneticist tell you where you come from.
Surprisingly, GPS took us to northeastern Turkey. At first, we did not understand the results, but when we looked at some old books, we found 4 ancient villages named Ishkenaz, Eskenaz, Ashenaz, and Ashkuz, names that may be derived from the word Ashkenaz. This place resides on a hub of trade networks. This is where Silk roads and other trade routes converge.
That's Aaron Al-Hayek. He's a Jewish geneticist from Johns Hopkins who wanted to figure out where Caucasian Jews come from because, you know, like map out genome, get ahead of diseases. His contact in Israel is Dr. Aurelia Oppenheim. She's a geneticist in the University of Jerusalem, and she runs the anti-aging department. And for a while, the government called both of these two Nazis. Would you like to know why? Because they both figured out where Caucasian Jews come from. Wink, wink. They're 40% Turkish, and newsflash, 40% Mongolian. As if the lactose intolerance didn't give it away. Like, hold on. Do you understand what this means? Like, okay, sure. Like, you don't have any ancestral tie to Israel, but like you don't have yellow fever. You're just dating your own race. Like real talk. What do you see in this picture? Like, is it a pierogi or is it a dumpling? Like, you say gefilte fish, I just see fish balls without the soup. Like, brother!